Good evening, model railroaders, and welcome back to the Second Section podcast, where it's just regular folks talking about model railroading. I'm your host, Andy Dorsch, and joining me this evening with his beautiful blue and yellow shirt is Mike Ostertag. Mike, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. It looks like you glitched out there.
Froze. What else is new? I mean, honestly.
With a great expression, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sitting here going, okay, first I didn't see the intro video. And then I didn't see the intro video pop up like it always does. I don't know. Is it supposed to?
Yeah, it's supposed to.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe we need to boot you out and kick you back in.
Yeah, hold on. I'll boot myself. Hold on.
You're gonna boot yourself? All right, Mike. Meanwhile, while Mike is figuring out his technical difficulties,
what is going on here?
Yeah, I think there's the Cellcom's conspiracy up in Green Bay right now is affecting his communication, but we have a pretty awesome show for everyone this evening. We have some folks from a very secret organization joining the show this evening. The Iowa Interstate, I guess you could call it the Scale Modelers, but you guys might be...
Nope. It's the Iowa Interstate Cosa Nostra.
Or
Mafia, or Mafia, if you want to call it.
Or the Mafia, yes. So Scott, thanks for jumping in there. You're no stranger to the Second Section podcast.
That's right.
So this is, I think, your third time back on the show, maybe fourth. You're getting close to that meatball sub and the smoking jacket.
Oh,
yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see Mike is back and now is moving. So welcome back, Mike. But yeah, we have the Iowa Interstate Cosa Nostra with us this evening. So Scott,
Costa Nostra? Don't use big words. Don't use big words.
The Mafia is here.
Oh, that I get. That I understand.
There you go.
Yeah, that I understand.
We're speaking your language now.
Yeah, the Mafia.
We're speaking northern Wisconsin.
Yeah, the Mafia.
Hey, forget about it. All right.
Forget about it.
So Scott, why don't you tee up for us a little bit of what's going on this evening here on the show and with the all of the IAIS folks here tonight.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us on, Andy and Mike. It's a pleasure, and I know all the other guys that are participating tonight are going to have a good time and look forward to this. The Iowa Interstate Mafia is a group of 5, 6, 7. We have some associate members in our group who don't exactly model the Iowa Interstate, but they've been, and we'll get to one here tonight in a few seconds. But there's 5 of us that model the line. We all model a different section of the railroad, so it's quite unique. We don't overlap. So we'll cover the actual line here in a minute or so, but we've got Joe Atkinson, and Joe models the western portion of the line. And then if you move east, I think the next one would be, who would be next? Would that be Colin? I think, is that right, guys? Colin. And then Colin had some technical difficulties. He's getting to another computer, and he'll be back with us. So Colin O'Brien, and then James McNab. A lot of people know James, and then myself, and then Kyle Brown, and the 5 of us model a different section, which we'll get to later in the show. Now, Jason Klocke, a lot of people know Jason. Jason models the Chicago Great Western, but he's one of our, I said associate members. I don't know what we'd call him, but he's a good friend and an excellent modeler. And he's on the show tonight because he actually worked for the Iowa Interstate. So he's our prototype connection. Now, we could almost say Joe, who we consider our godfather, and I'll get to that. Joe practically could be an employee of the Iowa Interstate. He's been on so many trains over the years and knows so many people who work for the railroad. Isn't that correct, Joe? Come on.
Hey, we keep that between ourselves.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Hey,
That's right.
Scott, wouldn't Jason simply be just one of your associates?
Yes. Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
he's
Like
he's one of the people that he's an associate that if
Yes.
there's an issue,
that's right. That's
take
right.
care
He's
of
like
it.
you refer to Jason.
Consigliere.
Yeah, there's
he's like a Luca Brasi. You know, if you know The Godfather, Luca Brasi was The Godfather's
the hammer.
hammer. You know, like
The
if anybody
enforcer.
has a problem, he call on Luca, and Luca take care of you. And one thing we have a lot of fun with this group of friends modelers is when we have a groups.io private group, and we talk about our railroads and our modeling, and we go back and forth with idioms from the movies, you know, like Luca and different things to, you know, we don't want to upset the Godfather, which is Joe, but Joe is the most mild-mannered, sweet man you'd ever meet. But Joe was designated as the Godfather because honestly, Joe was one of the, as far as I'm concerned, Joe, maybe you can correct me, but he was one of the first modelers out there who modeled the Iowa Interstate in a larger way. Plus he had so much knowledge because he drove all the prototype guys nuts by hanging around the tracks and kind of bum rides off them and, you know, asking too many questions and getting into trouble. So, so we designated Joe as the Godfather. And like I said, Joe's a really nice, sweet guy. And he's the opposite of the Godfather in many ways. So he's the perfect choice for the Godfather. And for those of you out in the audience who know the Godfather, I'm going to share my screen here because our banner for our groups.io is a little graphic that we put together. See if I can call it up here. Let me see.
We saw this in the pre-show, and I split a rib. It was pretty good.
Yeah, this is doggone good.
Can you guys see this?
Literally. Look at that.
Well, see, I'm a designer by trade, and so what I did was I took a composite from the original movie. Like this section here was the Godfather's office, and instead of Marlon Brando's head, I photoshopped in Joe's mug, and then Marlon had next to his whiskey here, he had a cat. So I got rid of the cat. Joe and his wife are big golden fans, so I put one of his golden retrievers in there. So and of course the Iowa Interstate logo on his lapel. And then over here is Louis' Restaurant, and if you that's where Michael Corleone rubs out to the police officer and I forget the other actor's name, but anyway, he, you know, it's a famous scene. And another section of the movie, Michael tells his brother, don't ever take sides with anyone against the family ever. But of course we spray painted out family, and we said, don't ever take sides with anyone against the Iowa Interstate ever, Joe the Don Atkinson. So, you know, we have a lot of fun with that, with the Godfather theme with our little group, and we're all bosses of our own territories. And if we get in trouble, well, then we get visited by Luca. So we want to avoid that.
So Scott, is it safe to say that between the five of you, once Colin gets in here, between the five of you, you have pretty much the whole railroad covered, or a really good chunk of it covered?
Really good chunk. Yep. Oh, and there's James.
There's James.
Making his grand.
Good evening, James.
Yeah, no, we just got to get Colin to come back on. Yep. We got everybody.
That's Boss McNab. James, we're just covering how we came up with the Iowa Interstate Cosa Nostra or Mafia, and why Joe is the Godfather.
Well, it's a well-earned title, to say the least, and I appreciate everybody letting me be a little late this evening. Don Atkinson, that issue's been taken care of. We don't need to worry about it anymore. We won't see Polly around anymore. So.
Yeah. We
I'm in danger.
I'm getting very uncomfortable here.
I know.
Yeah.
Colin's about 5 minutes out.
Okay, great. So that's a little introduction to our the fun aspect we have with The Godfather, and again, we have a lot of fun saying don't get in trouble with The Godfather, and Joe doesn't stretch his muscles too often. So
He's a benevolent Godfather.
Yes,
So that's
Yeah.
really great.
yes, but
So-
to answer your question, Mike, we pretty much do cover most of the railroad. Wouldn't you guys say so? Anyone else want to pipe in here? Joe, come on, you're the Godfather. Come on, say something.
Well, I would say we cover a pretty good section of it. I think the biggest gaps that come to mind would be like Adair. Well, I would say Central Iowa, and maybe Eastern Illinois, and what?
Like your Chicago connections, that far east?
Yeah, I don't think we've got anyone. I've never heard of anyone even considering anything on the far east end of the railroad, and I don't believe we have anyone covering that area between like Iowa City and Bureau.
Well, there you go, folks, out in the audience. Anybody want to
Join the family.
Join the family. You know, now's the opportunity. So there's spots open. There's territories that need to be worked. So we're only missing Colin, and once he hops on board, then we're each going to go through and talk about our layouts. But before we do, I asked Jason if he would give us a little introduction to the actual Iowa Interstate Railroad. The Iowa Interstate runs on former Rock Island trackage. So, Jason, you want to take it over?
Yeah, let's see if I can share the screen here. So I worked there.
How much did you guys pay Klomoski to say that?
Well, Tom wants to be in the good graces of the Godfather because he's done some things that have been questionable. So, you know, we don't want to have to send Luca and Luigi over to Georgia.
Oh boy,
Set Tom straight.
Yeah. All right, looks like you're queued up, Jason.
All right. Scott put these slides together for me, but I worked for the Iowa Interstate from 2000 to 2004. Had a lot of fun working there. But anyway, so most of these guys modeled probably, you know, after my era that I worked there. But Scott and I kind of talked a lot when he was designing his railroad and the Milan branch and stuff. And I hooked him up with some guys that used to work that line. But anyway, I'm just going to go over kind of a rough, brief history of the railroad and kind of go from there. But this is the government bridge there at Davenport, Rock Island, where they cross the Mississippi River. It's owned by the government, and then Rock Island Yard in Silvis is just the east of this. So
We've
this
been
is
there.
a banner from their corporate website. So
we've been there, Andy.
What's that?
We've been there.
Yeah.
The Iowa Interstate got its genesis kind of from the Iowa Railroad. So when the Rock Island went down in the early 80s, a group came together, and I believe they actually started on the west end out towards Atlantic, and so out in Joe's territory. And they basically started there, and then further east they started operating. But this ran only for about 4 years or so, the Iowa Railroad did. And then a group in Heartland Rail in 1984, the Iowa Railroad went bankrupt, and Heartland Rail, which consisted of several large shippers along the line. So like that's Maytag, I think, and Pellis, and the Crandek, the Cedar Rapids, Iowa City Railroad kind of all got together, formed this Heartland Rail, and they bought the line between Council Bluffs and Bureau, and the Iowa Interstate became the rail operator. So the Iowa Interstate didn't own the actual railroad. The Iowa Interstate was an operator of the line. And so then came the Iowa Interstate, and here's kind of a today's map of it. But you can see it runs between Omaha and Chicago. It's got trackage rights on the CSX. Used to be, when I worked there, the trackage rights on the CSX started at Bureau, Illinois, but now the Iowa Interstate has gotten a trackage rights or lease anyway from LaSalle, so they control up to LaSalle now. But and then they also control now down all the way to Peoria, where they only used to control between Henry and I believe Peoria. But anyway, they've expanded nonetheless a little bit. And I worked out of Iowa City. That was the headquarters of the Iowa Interstate when I worked there. Now it's Cedar Rapids, and the Crandek and the Iowa Interstate kind of had an agreement between Cedar Rapids and South Amana there for trackage rights up to Cedar Rapids, and now the Iowa Interstate runs up to Cedar Rapids on trackage rights.
Okay, I'm going to ask some dumb questions, so buckle up, everybody. What's the Crandek?
The Cedar Rapids and Iowa City Railway. It's an interurban railroad between Cedar Rapids and Iowa City, and it's still in operation today. It was for years owned by the power company. It's still owned by Alliant Energy, I believe, and
correct.
Yeah, it still runs. They don't run to Iowa City anymore. They used to. We used to interchange. We had a really cool interchanging system there in Iowa City, what we called the old way, and that kind of that dovetails into James McNab's layout when he does the Hills line. So when I worked in Iowa City, we used to interchange with the Crandek using the Hills line, which is it was a really interesting way we transferred cars there, and we would do it like 100-car trains. But anyway, this is a shot here. I don't know where it's at. Scott put these slides together, but this is the Iowa Interstate that I worked for, that I remembered. It was kind of ragtag. You had some engines painted in their colors. You had the Paducah Jeeps. You had that ugly 303, which everybody loves. And I'm going to tell you that running that thing as lead engine through towns and stuff, it was pretty embarrassing. I know the rail fans loved it and stuff, but when you're a 22-year-old college kid working on the railroad, and you're running through Iowa City seeing college girls, and you're hanging out the window of that thing, they kind of laugh at you.
It was called the Green Bean.
Yeah. Well,
I tell you what, that's awesome. That would be the way I would want to model it right there.
You had an XCSX engine, a Jeep. You had these Paducah Jeeps. You had some XBN Jeeps. Yeah, I mean, that 303 still had the R2D2 control stand in it, Mike, if you remember those round. We always called them R2D2 control stands.
Yeah.
It still had the knobs for all the lights and all the sanding and stuff, and then it had the ropes for the whistles, so for the horn. So
yeah,
it was. Yeah, but those Paducah Jeeps were fun to run. I mean, those were just, for a kid that was just learning how to run an engine and stuff, man, those things were fun to run. This is going over the Iowa River Bridge, so this would be like Colin's area that he models. This is in Iowa City. This is where I worked in Iowa City, but this is going over the Iowa River in Iowa City.
Look at that beautiful Jeep 20 in the third spot. Look at that. That is awesome.
Mike, actually before when the Iowa Railroad didn't have operating rights over the whole line between Council Bluffs and Chicago, the Milwaukee actually had, after the directed service order was discontinued on the Rock Island, the Milwaukee actually ran into Iowa City on the Rock Island and serviced the industries from Davenport.
Nice.
For a few years.
That'd be fun to model that too, I think.
Yeah. That's a picture on the east end there. This is at I'm not sure where the location, Barstow. The 413, I've ran that many times. The next Paducah Jeep there. You can tell by the frog eye headlights, and been in that many, many times. There's that ugly thing. Oh, God. And you know what? What made it worse was it used to just be green on the side. And Jeff Jensinius, the guy that was the chief mechanical officer of the Iowa Interstate, Jeff Jensinius, a heck of a nice guy. He kept that railroad running with this ragtag bunch of secondhand engines. And the shop in Iowa City decided to paint this. It was either Iowa City or Council Bluffs. Decided to paint this patch over there. It used to have just a stenciled 303, and I thought the patch on the side of the cab made it even uglier yet. But Joe Atkinson did an excellent model of it, and I'll have to say the model is cool, but the engine in real life as an engineer, that was not a cool engine. It didn't run well either, from when I ran it anyway. This is a more modern picture. This is at Silvis. This is a new yard that they've built stuff over at Silvis. So those are the ex-Rock Island shops in the background at Silvis.
Well, that's where we were, Andy.
That's exactly where we.
That's where we were. Very far.
Allegedly,
allegedly, we can neither confirm nor deny the existence of a road, or some barricades. That's it. That's all we can say.
It was a loose road.
It was vague. It could have been a road.
Such a cool shot.
I like this shot. This is really, really cool. It makes it even better, especially since we know exactly where this is. So it makes the picture. Now I understand what we were looking at. So is this taken from that overpass?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, now when I worked there, when I left in 2004 to go work on the CN up in Fort Dodge, Iowa, they were just getting the 700s, and these 154s were those ex-reserve mining engines that they had.
The 38-2s?
Yes.
The SD 38-2s?
Yep.
Yeah.
When I actually worked there, when I started there, they had IC SD, what are they, them 3-axle SD20s? Is that what they were?
Yeah.
Yeah. They had the 100 series of those. I ran those. They were there for a few years when I first started, but these engines were just coming in. Locomotives were just coming on. It was the first actual new quote they were used, but newer locomotives that the Iowa Interstate bought when I was there.
So we have a question from the audience there on that overpass shot. What year was that taken? G. Malcolm's asking.
I honestly, to tell you the truth, I don't know, because Scott, you put this presentation together. I don't know if there are dates on the photographs or not, these slides.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because I just took a variety to show some old and new from Eric Rasmussen. A lot of guys know that Eric is a supreme
he's good.
railfan photographer, and virtually all these are his shots, and I just pulled them, and I'm not sure the year.
I would say a few years ago, Silvis was just, it looks like just by the grading and stuff, this stuff at Silvis is just being put in. You can see the new, the grade and the tiles and stuff over there and the road. So
that shot is very recent.
For those who don't know that, haven't seen the Iowa Interstate, who are watching tonight, the Iowa Interstate, if you look at their herald, it's the old Rock Island shape, and a lot of their, like the way that nose is painted is very, like it harkens back to the Rock. So it's a neat connection. It's the Iowa Interstate has a really sharp looking livery.
Well, it's based on the college colors, the Iowa State and the University, and then the University of Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite railroads that I love to secretly love.
This dirty little secret railroad.
This is one of my dirty little secret railroads. Yeah.
Here's where I worked. I worked in Iowa City. And this is after I left, because there they bought those Chinese steam engines there. You can see them on the roundhouse lead. But when I worked here, this was the main shops for the at least the east end of the Iowa Interstate. Had just one little stall roundhouse there. But Iowa City was just, had 5-yard tracks if you count the south siding. And I tell you, a lot of cars and a lot of traffic moved through Iowa City. It was a busy little place. It was a fun yard to work, but this is looking west. The Iowa River is just beyond that curve in the train in the center there that's coming towards us. But man, it was a fun place to work then.
Well, and Jason, the beauty of that yard, and Colin, by the way, is modeling this, as well as he's worked on the Qs, the steam engines. So if anybody wants to ask Colin any questions about either, but the yard is actually you can model it because it's not huge.
Oh, yeah, the longest track held maybe held, well, the siding, of course, held quite a few cars. But as far as the yard tracks and stuff, I think, 4 was where they parked the power there. And then 3, 15 cars, 12 cars, 20 on the north siding. So, I mean, it was just, it's a very compact yard. And this has taken over the overpass there right by the yard office. So Dodge Street. So
yeah, I looked at modeling Iowa City at one time, and I want to say that you could fit the entire yard and engine house in well within like a 2-foot shelf. So
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, it's very compact, very, very compact.
But you'll see it again when Colin reviews his railroad. So
This is out west somewhere. I'm not sure where this is at because I didn't get out west. I usually went east and then up to Cedar Rapids, but this is somewhere out west. But that's some of the newer power. Well, not that now they have all GE, mostly all GEs and stuff, but that's probably when the 700s and stuff were just a few years old.
mm-hmm.
And then I think that's it, isn't it, Scott?
That's the last one. So thank you for the introduction, Jason. Appreciate it. And Jason is, since he was employed by the Iowa Interstate, as the show progresses, again, if anybody has any questions about the prototype, just ask away because Jason knows a lot about the railroad. So, and now what we planned for you all is we're going to go east-west, and we'll start out with Kyle. Kyle, if you want to share your screen and talk about your modeling adventures.
Sure.
We're all ready.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. I did want to add that about the question as far as are there gaps or how much of the railroad are we covering? My railroad, it does cover from LaSalle to Utica, and Utica is where the CSX begins the property. So not all the way to Chicago, of course, as that's Metra and CSX trackage. But anyway, I do have plans for future expansion. I've got a room that is about 16 by 26 feet that will eventually include Bureau, Silvis, and hopefully parts of the Peoria as well. So I did put together a presentation.
Nice.
I'll share with you.
All right. Just as a quick reminder while Kyle's getting that set up, make sure that if you have questions, get them in to the chat so I can bring them up, and the family here can answer those questions promptly. All right, take it away, Kyle.
All right, thank you. Can you see my screen?
Oh, yes.
Does that work? Okay, very good. All right, so I chose LaSalle because that's where I grew up. And I do remember my dad would take me down to the tracks. I do my homework down there. And never took a camera with me, of course, but no, we would see, all the colorful engines go by, the orange and the white, the green. I do remember the green one time. And I had grandparents who lived in Ottawa, which is about 15 miles upstream. And sometimes they would call and they would say, we just saw the Iowa Interstate. So we'd run down there and we'd wait for a while. But I live in Peoria now. LaSalle is about 60 miles upstream from us. And I remember the part that really draws me to LaSalle is the hill that I've included some pictures of here. And as a kid, I would see the CSX push these cement hoppers up this hill, and where they then when they would reach the top of the hill, they would interchange with Lone Star Cement, and they go across the river on former Illinois Central trackage. And from there, they would mine it across the river in Oglesby, and they would deliver to the Iowa Interstate, or I'm sorry, they would deliver to the CSX, back in the 90s. But since then, the Iowa Interstate has taken over, and the Lone Star Cement, now Buzzy Unichem, is now a transload facility. It is mined out, and so now the Iowa Interstate delivers loads. So instead of receiving loads, they deliver loads, and it's quite a show to see them push them up the hill here. And
what's the grade there? Do you know?
Well, you know what? I've included a few slides. This is them shoving up the hill, but I've included a couple. Here's one that really shows the steepness of it. That one gives you a pretty good idea. I don't know. I measured it once as being about a quarter mile.
If I can interrupt, Kyle,
Sure.
I remember there's a YouTube video of them switching cars and shoving up the hill. So
Right.
if anybody does a search, you might very well find the YouTube video. It's interesting to watch.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a local guy there that I met a few times. His name's Mark Baker, and he documents a lot of it. He does have a YouTube channel, and I think it's Prototype. I can't think of the name of it, but yeah, if you would just search up Iowa Interstate Bureau Switcher, LaSalle on YouTube, numerous videos of them going up the hill. I've heard that it's a 2 or 3% grade, but I don't know. I do know that it rises about 45 feet total in about approximately a quarter mile. So
It's pretty healthy grade.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I've seen them use 2 units. Usually it's 2 pushing, because of course they're loads. In this photo, you can see, of course, the main line. You can down the line, you can see the Illinois Central Bridge. But what they'll do is they'll bring the loads from the CSX in Utica. They'll break cuts of cars off, and they'll shove them up about 10 or so at a time. And I've seen 3 units. Usually it's 2. But I've tried to include some photos to give you an idea of how steep the grade is. Once you're up the hill, then they deliver the cars here to what is formerly the Illinois Central, and there's just a small remnant of it. It used to be called the Gruber line. Would go up through Dixon, Amboy, Mendota, Freeport, and so they deliver the loads here, and they drop them off here in the yard, and then the cement company has this great little center cab.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, they also have a Jeep 9 rebuild from the Chicago Northwestern, but it's not nearly as interesting, at least to me. And so this little center cab can't do much at a time, but it brings a lot more empties, of course. But when it's bringing the loads across the river, it's limited to probably 5 or 6 at a time, I think. So.
I love those things. Those little switchers.
Yeah, I don't think they can pull much, but they sure are cool to see. And the easternmost point of my layout is really the interchange with the CSX there here in Utica. And I have never caught any action in Utica, but the CSX brings loaded cement, drops it off here in Utica, and which is about, I think, 6 or 7 miles from LaSalle. The Iowa Interstate then will pick up the loads, they'll bring them, and then they will actually shove the empties backwards with a conductor on the front of the cars. But they'll shove them all the way backwards to Utica.
How long of a shove is that?
6-7 miles, something like that.
Yeah. Piece of cake.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, just a guy on the front.
Yeah, it's a piece of cake.
No.
Well, as long as you're the engineer, it's fine.
I'm gonna say you're in the cab,
Yeah.
nice and dry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now back when I first started watching them, I guess it would have been about 2008 when I got back into. I would see them distribute power, so there would be a unit on the front and on the back when they would shove to Utica. Now when I see them, most often they're just shoving backwards. Both units are on the tail end, and no, they're just shoving the cars first. So. Next slide is my track plan.
Ooh.
I can't take credit for this. So I got a buddy here in Peoria area, and we've been talking a lot about what I would model in the Iowa Interstate. I didn't really think that I would get to model LaSalle in the current space because as you can see from this photo, it's about, I think the one side is about 12 feet. The other side of the room is about 13 feet. And so I thought I would just model in this room, maybe just a small portion of the Peoria branch. But my friend Isaac, he's let's see what we can do. And he's pretty much a genius. And so he put this together for me, and I think it's going to work.
I think he's in the chat tonight.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, he said he drew a crap plan for you.
Yeah, so here up at the top, you would have what I showed you earlier in the slides, the yard there, the Illinois Central yard, and then down here on the right, you would have that switch and then the hill off the main line. So I just thought I wouldn't have the room. I thought it would be far too compressed, and I do probably want to redo it when I move into the larger space. It's it's going to be years here, probably 8 years or so. But
so we have another question for you, Kyle.
Sure. That's perfect because I feel like I've been just rambling. So.
No, you're doing good. You're doing real good. So from Tom Klimchek, he says, do you model the LaSalle Depot? If so, do you model HO scale yellow jackets at the base of the train order signal?
Oh, no, the depot would be just beneath this track plan. And I think the depot that he's talking about used to be a lawnmower shop. After it was the Rock Island Depot, it became a lawnmower shop, and it would just be a little bit too far out of the picture here.
So what my old eyes can't read the track plan all the way. What size room are you building this in?
Let's see. I think this the right side here is a little longer than the left side, and the way that the basement walls. And I do have a picture of the room to show you guys. But I think it's about 13 feet on the right, and it's about 1.5 foot less on the left.
Oh, so you got a fairly decent run there. So all said and done, About 30, 35 feet.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
cool.
and across it's about 8 feet. I think it's the old, the former coal room of my house. So
You must live in an older house then, I'm assuming.
yeah, built in 1930.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
You
Yeah,
can
and then-
relate to that, Andy.
Yeah, mine was built in 1880, and it's a disaster down here, but we love it nonetheless.
Here on the left will be the interchange with the CSX in Utica. I don't know much about the industries there. That's still an area for study and research, to see what other commodities and other deliveries will be made here. That's kind of still an area that I need to look into. What they receive and what they ship and so forth. With the main focus, of course, being the cement operation.
I think that's really cool.
So this is the room,
Jeez.
and it's not. In the next slides, you'll see a little bit more progress. But I've spent most of my time actually getting the room ready. Ripping out the ceiling, painting it black, putting up the backdrop, and that kind of thing. Most of my recent work has just been in the layout room versus actually the layout. But then my most recent here that has been cutting out the piece for the hill and then taking that plywood and raising it up about 45 scale feet. So there in the distance would be the yard in LaSalle, and then the hill track.
Oh, man.
That's going to be a cool layout.
Yeah, I'm excited for just to see like a Jeep 38-2 really just struggling to push a cut of cement cars up that grade.
Kyle, I like how you have that the bench work already marked for approximately where things are going to go.
Oh yeah,
that's really smart. That's a really smart way to do things.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I've drawn grids over. Some of that comes from my friendship with Isaac, and then there's another friend I've got in the railroading world, Matt Fricks, and those guys kind of show me that it's smart to lay out a track plan on the plywood.
Yep.
And so that's what I've drawn a grid. Basically, I haven't drawn the track plan on the wood, but I've drawn out a grid so I can see where everything's going to go. So
that's a really good way to do it. And I think we were supposed to have Matt and Isaac on the show not too long ago, but they had some other commitments. But yeah, with friends like that, they get you motivated and get you building.
It really has, yeah. Being part of this group, the Iowa Interstate group, and then of course having these guys. We've got a couple of guys who live in Peoria who are kind of model train experts. Have really helped me with my motivation. Get moving, get building. And Colin put out an advertisement for my chair, and so I have to include it.
Oh my goodness.
Because when he put on his Facebook group that I would be showing my Iowa Interstate chair, of course, I have to. So this chair comes from Green Bay, the Viper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they still do custom embroidery, but once I saw this chair and saw that they do custom work, thought it'd be perfect for the layout. My layout's about it's about 55 inches high. As you can see in this photo, it sits me up, eye level with the track.
I like that.
So And then, of course, you can roll around the room real easily.
Holy man! Tell me you didn't pay this.
I'll tell you whatever you want to hear, but
Holy
The family doesn't discuss money on the show.
No, I know. I'm just holy man.
Yeah, they're pretty expensive.
Yeah. Be
equipment.
careful, Mike. Be careful. You're talking about the Atkinsons. This is money's no object here.
Yeah.
Hey, forget about it.
well, we're all in pretty deep, aren't we, in this hobby?
Yeah.
But my kids actually got me the embroidery for Father's Day a couple years ago, and so they wanted to get me the chair for Father's Day, and so we agreed that they would chip in and get me the embroidery, and so that makes it extra special to me. That
it looks beautiful.
Oh, that's a sweet share.
Yeah, they were really great to work with, and I reached out to the Iowa Interstate, and they emailed me back. They said, yeah, we have no objection to you using our logo, and so they were great to work with as well.
See the Andy, the Robert in the chat's getting in the spirit, Moose and Rocco.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what we love about this group.
Oh, good.
Anything else, Kyle?
Well, that's about all I've got. And that's my last slide. There's my high rail truck.
Great.
So,
well, thank you. That was great.
Yeah, well done.
We'll look forward.
So there was one question about the steam engines. I wanted to circle back to that before we got too far away from it, because let's see if I can find it. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so did one of those Q steam locomotives come from the X Knox Cane Railroad in western Pennsylvania?
Both of the QJs came from China directly in 2006. RDC, which is the parent company for Iowa Interstate, purchased both of those and brought them to Iowa City via a container ship and then multiple rail transport to get it to Iowa City, where then they were unloaded. And so I think the ones that the commenter is referring to are actually a smaller, like a 282. Either an SY or something like that class, and these are QJ and these are 210-2, so they're a little bit bigger.
Oh, thanks for that, Colin.
You bet.
Okay, well, I think I'm next, guys. So I will see if I can fire up my share the screen here.
It's always a production to get it done.
Yeah.
Let me see here. Yeah, you have to go through multiple steps, don't you?
And you guys tonight are above the grade with getting stuff, on screen and stuff.
See, look at
production.
Andy, let's just go. Let's go get a beer. These guys can run the show.
Yeah,
that's it.
They don't need us.
Yeah, who needs us? Look at this.
What a bridge, Scott.
Well, thanks. Yeah, this is my signature scene on I modeled the Milan branch of the Iowa Interstate, and I'll show you the geography here in a second, but these are lattice truss bridges that were built in the 1890s that are still in use today, and these are my models of them. Just two spans. There's two sections of the river that the railroad traverses. And I don't know how many. I'm forgetting how many spans. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There might be 7 total, but I only had space to model 2. So here's the Iowa Interstate SW 1200 250 crossing it, and I'll talk more about this engine here in a second. But let me see what I'm doing here. Okay, so there's my little tag, Milan branch. And again, I've got photos from Eric, so he'll make another Okay, now here's the prototype with a train pulling steel coil cars for a company called the Steel Warehouse across one section. I kind of combined both crossings into one. I took some features of both. So, but anyway, that's what the prototype looks like. It's amazing these bridges, they hold up so well all these years. And there's another view from a top view. What I did, I designed. Now this is how you would this is the angle if you were operating on the layout that you would view the train. And I created a transition from the predominantly green part of the river to reflective blue, but I designed it so that at normal average height, normal viewing angle, you wouldn't see the transition, but it comes into play when I take photographs at a low angle. It works out pretty well to give you that depth, that sort of thing. So
this is really, really cool.
Oh, thanks. So here's a map of what I modeled. Now the modeled area is in red, and then the staging areas are in green. So at the north end there, I have a little fiddle staging, and then when the train goes onto the layout, it first goes to a runaround, and then the first industry is Dell's Metals. And as you progress south, or I think that's west, it goes, I model 31st Street. There's a Sara Lee bakery plant. Then the branch swings to the east there, goes across the Rock River. There's another spur down there to service Consumers Aggregates, which is where the Iowa Interstate gets a lot of their ballast. And then when it goes across the Rock River, you can see the Mississippi in the upper left. So the Rock River actually comes out of Wisconsin, goes through Illinois, comes in, and then empties into the Mississippi right here. When you go across the second tributary of the Rock River, then it goes by a road that I modeled called Big Island Road, goes through a little section, and then there's the Milan Depot. And then I have staging that services Robert and Dibdall. That's a lumber dealer. And I also took a liberty, and there was a cold storage food distributor called Eagle Distributing, and the railroaders called this section that broke off to the east the Eagle Sub, and then the one that broke off to the west the Andalusia sub. I had that Andalusia runaround. That's incorrect. It's called the Milan runaround by the railroaders. And then my modeling ends right at where Interstate 280 passes over the layout. But then there's 4 different industries that are serviced via staging. So here's the layout plan. I have 42 linear feet, so it's by 2 feet, so it's a relatively small layout. I share my office space and some storage in the room, and I actually recently was thinking about abandoning the layout, but then I decided I'm going to keep building it and finish it because I had never really actually operated. I've been working on the layout for about 10 years, and I never have operated on it. I mean, legitimately operate. I mean, I run a train now and then back and forth. And then for a final article that's going to run in RMC, I think in their July issue, I had a little series in there that was fun to do, but it's wrapping up with the July issue. And then I'm covering operations. So I had Jason, who's here tonight, Jason Klocke, and Clark Probst, for those of you who know Clark. I had those two come down, and I set up an op session, and I had so much fun, or we had so much fun operating it, I decided, no, I've got to finish this. And it says a lot seriously, guys, it says a lot for the power of operations, because once you actually operate your model railroad in a realistic fashion, it can change the total dynamic and feel of the layout versus just, working on it for years and have it basically be a static display. So if I convey anything tonight, that's something important. And by the way, I noticed that Matt Forkham's in the chat. I used Matt's Ops Buddy.
Yeah.
That is a lot of fun to use.
Yeah, and I absolutely love it because I'm not one of these guys who likes a lot of complex setups for my ops. I want to simplify it to the max, and I think it worked out pretty well. Matt set up his Ops Buddy to be. He uses a roll dice to determine which industries will be served and what other parameters are going to be incorporated into the ops session. I built, rather than use an actual roll die, I built the randomization into my Google spreadsheet. So you just click a cell and it randomly goes through the 1 to 20 numbers to determine what to do. And then I just simply pull cars out of my car inventory and the numbers and place them. And it's super easy for a small layout. And if anybody is looking for a very easy way to set up their ops sessions on a small layout, Matt's Ops Buddy is a really good option.
Scott, so I got a question here.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that was the Rock River.
Yes.
Okay, Andy, is that the same Rock River that the CNW and the WSOR infamously go over?
Yes.
That's the same river. So that goes all the way down into Illinois and then empties into the Mississippi there.
Yep.
It
Same
starts.
That's a haul. Holy cow.
It starts 8 miles away from my house, between basically my house and Mike Shanky's house in Fox Lake.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I can jump over it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, well, you can step over the Mississippi where it's the headwater is actually. So I mean, no, that's really cool that river goes that far and it connects back up into this neck of the woods. That's
goes
really,
through the
really
Horicon Marsh, the whole deal.
Yeah. Cool.
Now, one thing that Joe Atkinson helped me. He directed me years ago when I was looking for a section of the Iowa Interstate to model, because I had some given and druthers and I wanted to use short wheelbase diesels, which the SW 1200, 250 and the GP10s were like the perfect engines, and that's all I run on the layout is those two models. And I wanted a variety of car types, and the Milan branch has about as many car types as one could imagine. Here at Dell's Metals, of course, they take scrap gons. The Sara Lee receives pressure differential hoppers, consumer aggregates. You've got small 70-ton ballast cars, which were really interesting. The Robertson Dibdall, center beam flats. Eagle Cold Storage takes reefers. And then over here, you can see on this staging, we have 4 industries that are served. Interstate Chemical takes tank cars. Country Stone takes larger open hoppers. Miller Container takes paper box cars. And Steel Warehouse takes steel gons, as well as bulkhead flats. So I had this huge variety of car types that I could run on the layout, which was absolutely perfect for what I wanted to do. Let me move on here.
So there's a question from Tom. Again, he says, what are the allowed speeds on the branch?
10 miles per hour. And I've got the engine that runs right at about 10 to 12 scale miles per hour, and it's plenty appropriate for my layout. It's just the right amount of speed. And when Jason and Clark came down and we operated on it, Jason gave me some good suggestions because he had actually operated the 250, and he thinks that, Jason, you can pop in here and give his opinion on the 250, but he's been waiting with bated breath to give his opinion on the 250. but he gave me some really good advice on how I could tweak. I run the layout with the proto throttle, and I had the engine tweaked to what I thought was uber realistic performance, but it needs to be tweaked a little bit more to get even better performance. So
Scott, it's an SW1200. There can never be anything wrong with it.
well, Jason, go ahead.
Believe me, there was, Mike.
Oh, come on. No. It's an SW1200. It's awesome. There's nothing wrong with it.
Mike, you see that horn on the top of that thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that has to be the most awful, loud, insane, like obscenely loud, irritating horn I have ever on any locomotive I've ever ran in my life. And we were delivering cars over in Davenport to at that time it was IMRL. And so they interchanged with them over on the east side of the river at Davenport. And so we're going down the middle of Davenport downtown, and around the neighborhoods there is not a very good area, so to speak. And we're going through there, and I got an engineer who's about deaf, and he's just blasting. And it's like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I thought for sure somebody's going to put a bullet through one of them windows. I mean, oh my God, that horn is just, it is insanely loud on that thing.
And it's a 5-chime, and I've got the exact sound, and it works great, but I don't run it at the same volume that Jason had to be tortured by. It's a really neat locomotive and the model version is well loved and works great. So, but here's a picture of it in action. And again, there's a bulkhead flat and a whole string of EJ&E coil cars, so you can see the type of look that we can have on the layout. And then here's one of the Jeep 10s pulling a weed train down the branch.
Cool.
And
Don't let Luke Lemon see that. He'll be want to model that one next.
Yeah, because I would love to have
awesome.
I would love to model a weed train that would make an appearance, but I can't get any of the manufacturers to. I'm not sure I want to take on a scratch build project with that main box car. It's so intricate. But anyway.
Scott, after the show is over with, you and I have to have a conversation. I'm dead serious. That you may be able to get your weed sprayer wish come true.
Okay, that'd be awesome.
All right.
So moving on, what I'm going to focus on for the rest of the presentation, guys, and I'm going to move along pretty quick so the other guys have some time, but I'm just going to show you the 3 main industries that are actually modeled on the viewable part. There's so many of the industries that are serviced just via staging, but these are the ones that I'm actually building models for. So the first one is Dale's Metals. Now, I haven't started on Dale's. It's my next project, but I wanted to show you what the Google image is. And if you look down here, you can see a stick of rail right here where they used to have a turnout, and it turned in fairly steep. And I think it probably ended right here, but this is where they used to push and deliver the scrap gons. And but they pulled it out years ago. And then Dale's has a huge variety with many different types of cranes working. You can see one here, one here. They're kind of like, where's Waldo? They're in here, but and I've got some really neat crane models. And then the only thing I can show you after this Google image of what I'm going to use scrap that Coastman makes. Roger Rasmussen is the owner of Coastman's out on the West Coast, and he makes this absolutely awesome looking scrap. Wow. So I've got a bunch of this that I got from him, and it all comes in this kind of monochromatic rust look, but I'm going to have to color it and paint it and squish it and glue it and do all that, but it's going to be really neat.
So is that all cast as one thing, Scott, or is it
no,
or the separate loose scrap, or what is it?
It's all loose. It comes in bags. And what Roger does is he's got a large variety of different 3D printed models that he's designed, and he prints them on his 3D printer. And then he has some proprietary process that he uses to color it and crunch it and make it look like this, but it's the best. I was real worried about where I was going to find really good, realistic looking scrap, because the only thing available is the preformed, unless you make your own. But then when I found Rogers, I said, hallelujah, because this is what I need. So that's what I'm going to use.
This is great. Scott Eric Catalano. Looks like something I pulled out of my shower drain from all the females in this house.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It makes good scrap, so.
Yeah, there was a question from Tom Holly I wanted to just catch. So it sounds like you're leading into it. On the off layout industries, do you line them up on the layout and shove to staging?
No, in fact, I took Jason's a good friend, and he, since he's in his former life, he's a professional engineer. He gives me good advice on how I can enhance my operations with how to set the cars up. And one thing he told me recently was, because I was thinking about that very issue that Tom brought up, how can I make it more interesting for, quote, model railroaders to operate the layout? And Jason said, a lot of times switch crews will be in a hurry and they'll tell the yard crews, don't block it, just give me the cars, we're out of here. Because they know what they're doing, they want to get after it. And so you can actually, you don't have to block all your cars to make it super efficient. When I fiddle it, I mix them up, and then when the crew, and we did this when Jason and Clark operated, when they get to the far end of the layout and they have to use the runaround to get the cars in the proper position before they shove them into staging, so that they deliver them in the proper sequence to the industries. And you'd be amazed how much time it takes to reconfigure those cars on one runaround. So that's just another bit of advice that was great. So
yeah, it's okay to hold on to a different type of car in order to spot an industry that, you just save so much time that way, Scott. That's a real railroader type of way to do it, actually.
Right. And that was a great tip by Jason. So that's what I'm going to do. And it made it a lot of fun because we had to shove some cars over on the Eagle sub, right next to the Milan Depot, and then go back to the runaround and move cars around. So it's a model railroader's dream. The next industry is Sara Lee, and this is a really unique. It's no longer being serviced; it's gone. I think it's a tire dealer now. But if you look at these Google images, there's a lot of variety in structure type, like the arched roof line with the interesting vents and the storage silos and all the other doodads that are attached to the building. And so I had to scratch build this. I have a hobby laser that I use, and I love the thing. So that factored in the build of this model. And here's a blurry close-up view to show you how they placed one of the or two of the pressure differentials. They got one in the back that they'll shove in later. This one's locked in place next to the feeder pipes and things like that. So that's
what's the ice machine? But what's the ice machine for? That's what I want to know.
I'm not sure, but I modeled it.
I mean, cool. And then like Andy said, you have the two cigarette containers. Though actually, there's four of them. But they got a recycle bin there, so I mean that's
they
that's
probably
something.
Drink a lot of whiskey and smoke a lot of cigars there when they're working. I don't know.
I would think. Well, that's probably what gives Sara Lee their flavor.
Yeah, exactly. So here's the location on the layout. This is the on the bottom there is called the stockyard runaround. I have 3 runarounds on the layout, and that's the second runaround. And the Sara Lee plant spur goes off that, and I had to build it into the part of a curve on the backdrop. But I decided to build it on this hardboard here. And so I used my laser to cut the elevations and glue, and also cut the ribs, if you could call them that form the superstructure of the building. And I cut out all the door details with laser board and glued them together and painted them. And this gator grip is a really neat glue. It sets up it has some working time, but it's an acrylic and it sets up really nice. So in case anybody wants to check that out, but you can see I've got specialized dimensional windows as well as vents. And just the laser just accents the line so it looks like a vent, and you paint it appropriately. And then I went a little crazy. I've got a little FDM printer, the one with filament, and I wanted to have the actual Sara Lee logo lit. So, like you saw in the first photo, so I printed this little case up and had some translucent logos printed up. So this is the building in production. And what's included in this is all kinds of, there's Walthers and mini prints and Tully models in here. And before I painted them.
Those look like vacuum. Those are vacuum pumps right there from Tully models. Is that what those are?
Yep. And that's what, because those vacuum pumps, are used to pump the material out of the cars up the chute to the silos. So, and then this just shows a variety of the details and how I painted them and
well done.
Put them on the building. Yeah, thanks.
Look at the security cameras.
Yeah, that's a mini prints. So I had to have a security camera on there.
I like that air conditioning unit.
Yeah.
That was the Walthers one. And,
you weathered it up really nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because those things always get rusty and nasty and it was fun. And then this is the final. And also on here is, if you guys know Alchem Scale Models, they make a really nice brass safety ladder. And so I used Bernie Kopinski.
Oh.
I used Bernie's safety ladders there. And that worked out really nice for the silos. But I've got a lot more detail to put in here. Like I want to put in gravel and do more weathering. And of course, there's a parking lot, and where the cars are sitting, the cars will be weathered, and then that'll all be concrete over the tracks. So you won't see the tracks. It'll all be split. But it was fun to do that curved roof with all the silver rubbing off.
Radial roof building that he did, that it looks even better in person, seeing it.
Wow.
In person. Radial roof buildings are hard to scratch build, and doing it with a laser like he did it. I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'll never give up my laser. It's too much fun. Okay, and then the final industry I want to show you guys is consumer aggregate. It might be consumers with an S. I always mess that up. But the challenge here was how to build. The only thing that is at consumer is a front end loader and a bunch of piles of rock. Okay, and so how to make the rock look convincing. If you look at how this rock is laid out, where they dumped it. Your smaller piles, you have maybe steeper banks, little chiseled out areas. So, and I did some Google searches and looked at other images of how rock is dumped and scooped up. And you can see on the left here where they take a front end loader and they scoop it out, and it gives you this more canyon-like look. And so that's what I wanted to recreate. And I decided to do the scene with this florist foam because it chisels out really. It makes a horrendous mess, but it chisels out really. And so these were some smaller piles I wanted to put along the fascia, and then I wanted to have a really large pile that you see in the background there as a view block as as it transitions over to the Rock River scene you see on the left.
Yeah.
So again, I used the laser once I had these little foam pieces cut out to cut out. I just traced the foam pieces and mimicked it on the laser and made these little fascia things. So once they're glued in place and painted like a fascia, it kind of extends it. Yeah. And then here's how it looked when I just used a long blade knife and chiseled out the larger rocks. And I had to glue. You can see the reflections of the glue where the pieces of florist foam had to make the bigger piles. And so there's the big pile before I added all, and this is just the florist foam all chiseled. And then I used latex paint to seal it. But then when I started to apply the rock to the model, and let it flow down, then it creates a more realistic look. So
you said a long form knife. Is this the knife here? When you say
Right.
something like that, I think of like Crocodile Dundee, right? And
no, it's like this one,
That ain't a knife.
it's like this, it's like what's in the picture here. You know, the ones
Yeah.
that you click out and
yeah,
you can extend them. That's what I used. And then
Okay.
I made this kind of bowl-like shape with just a piece of plastic, and so that I could glue on some sand initially, and then I came back with the ballast because I didn't want to waste a lot of ballast. I wanted to be able to, do most of it. Then I used Smart Mud, which is made by VMS.
Yeah.
I spread it out to make the base of Consumers undulate a little bit, and also put in tire tracks. And so I took my front end loader before I weathered it, and I ran it across the Smart Mud, because the Smart Mud has a working time of maybe 15 minutes where you can put the tire tracks in, and then it'll solidify.
Yep.
And so this is how it looked after all the tire tracks were in place and the forms. And then I came back and I used this pearl grout, and I just spread it out, and then I just stabbed down with a brush to spread it out and make it look realistic. And that's the end result. So you can
Oh, dang, that's
you
awesome.
can see the pile that looks different, because when the front end loader's moving around, it's crushing all the rocks. So that surface has to look different than the actual piles. So that's why I wanted the difference. And that's another view. You can see that the large view block looks a lot different than with the ballast applied and flowing down the sides and smaller mounds.
That turned out awesome.
Yeah,
That's
thanks.
really, really good.
Yeah, I thought it turned out. And I threw this in because I also was experimenting with ammo pigments as a weathering medium, and I used them almost exclusively for a lot of the weathering on this little front end loader. So you can see how it looked in the inset photo, where it was the kind of a bright yellow, and then I toned it down, and then the one on the right is where it's finished, and all of the weathering, like in the bucket itself, those are all pigments that had a little bit of pigment fixer mixed in to liquefy the pigment and just spread it on, and it looks like it's really digging up aggregate. The only thing I regret about this model is before I started the weathering at all, I would have taken a heat gun to each of the wheels and softened the plastic and pressed it down, to simulate weight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, I forgot to do that. So, oh well, you live, you learn. And the last thing I want to show you guys is the Milan Depot is besides the Rock River being a signature scene on the layout, the Milan Depot is another unique structure. It used to be a depot that serviced, way back in the day, actually two different railroads. Two different railroads came together where the depot is now, before the Rock Island took it over. And here it is back in the late 60s when the Rock, the depot actually was pretty dilapidated, and then it was resurrected, and it's been a daycare center, a coffee shop, and now it's a confectionery business. So it's been a lot, and it actually had different colors too. I decided to paint it the yellow and red, and so here's where you see the Eagle sub on the left and the Andalusia sub on the right. And so here's my model of it. And the neat thing about this photo is that Tom Johnson, who's a friend, and Tom makes these incredible pop machines. And so I asked him, because there's a Pepsi machine outside in this location. And I asked Tom, could you work your magic? And so he graciously made me a pop machine. So that's my claim to fame, I got a famous Tom Johnson pop machine on my Milan Depot. And then
where did you get the gas meter?
That's what's the name of that Canadian company?
Is it GC Laser?
No, it's
Eric's Miniatures.
No, it's inner something hobbies. It's
Intercity Hobbies.
No, it's inter. gosh, I'll have to look it up and I'll put it in the thing. It's Enter something hobbies, and it's a 3D printed. And boy, was that a beast to paint! Oh my goodness, because
I can imagine.
I had to get out the mega microscope to paint that thing.
A single hair brush.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, interaction. Thanks.
Interaction.
Jimmy.
Oh, there you go.
Interaction
Thanks,
hobbies make them. Yeah, and they come in a
wow.
little tube, and I bought like 4 or 5 of them for other buildings, and then I used the laser to make this little patio, and eventually that'll have landforms around it and weeds and everything. So, and I took a liberty and modeled a little fuel tank, which would never be there, but on the rock, back in the rock days, they had a fuel tank back there, and I liked it. So heck, I'm going to do it. And this final image is underneath the I-280 bridge. They have the track has a depression, so it pumps up mud and makes those little muddy water. This happens to be frozen on the left, but I modeled it underneath my I-280 bridge with the muddy water and the.
That's cool.
And the
it turned out really good.
Freshly pumped, mud sticking out of there. So anyway, that's all for me, guys. I hope I didn't take too long, but
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
That's awesome, Scott.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so now we're progressing west, right?
Yes.
So Scott, where are we going now?
Now we're going to James McNab.
All right.
Evening, everyone. I want to thank you all for letting me join in this. I am reminded every time we get together as a family just how far I have to go to catch up with my friends and colleagues, and so I am a better modeler because of this. So I've got my slides loaded up, and I'm ready to start presenting whenever you guys are.
Sure.
This is not my
man.
railroad because I stole this. I
was going to say.
This is not my railroad. This is not my again, I still have miles to go. This is a preview of my friend and fellow Iowa State modeler Colin O'Brien's Iowa River scene, which I go back and forth between what is actually the signature scene for the entire Iowa Interstate. And it's either this or it's the government bridge that you saw under Jason's presentation. They're both bridges. To me, this is the Iowa Interstate. This is the scene that when we say, if you had to describe the Iowa Interstate in one scene, it's literally this location. And as you will find out when Colin goes next, this is so perfectly reproduced in detail that it's just an absolute masterpiece. But if you look at the far right hand side, you'll see this little connection here, and Colin has accurately included that on his layout because that's what you see in real life. But that is the Crandix Hills line, or the Iowa Interstate Hills Industrial Spur. So on his layout, he's got the main line going it with a small dummy representation of the industrial spur. My layout does the exact opposite. So I have the small dummy representation of the main line track, and then we are modeling what is actually underneath. And so this is the Hills line, the Iowa Interstate's Hills Industrial Spur. Since we're getting a little late in the evening, this story has been told about 1,000 times. So if you want to really kind of catch up about how this railroad came to be, please pick up a copy of Model Railroad Planning 2022. My article from Demolition to Discovery talks about the end of the Grimes line and the start of the Hills line and kind of the why I did that. But that story has been told about 1 billion times. I don't want to waste a lot of time doing it, but I will quickly summarize. I used to have a railroad of the Grimes industrial track. And I had this was my first real railroad that I ever built for the Iowa Interstate. The Grimes line is an 11-mile industrial track that tees from Des Moines, Iowa, and shoots northwest to the suburb of Grimes, Iowa. I had this railroad for, almost 7 years at that point. I loved it. It was a great railroad. It got written up in Model Railroad Planning, got written up in Great Model Railroads, was a featured layout tour for Model Railroad Video Plus. Just about everybody on this call has operated this layout at some point in its existence. Had fate not intervened, I'd probably still have this railroad today. But fate intervenes sometime. And so we were talking earlier about old houses. I'm 1923 down here, and so the sewer line collapsed. We had to replace all of it. The railroad had to come out, and it was just, all right, goodbye, we're done. We got to try something different. And at that point, it was, I have done the Grimes line for King and Country, and I felt that anything to do differently would pale in comparison. And so when I had the opportunity to kind of start over, I kind of wanted to start over and try something different. And I was really considering a lot of different opportunities, including not the Iowa Interstate. In my next life, I'm going to model the Norfolk Southern here in Des Moines. For those of you who don't know, the Norfolk Southern does make it all the way to Des Moines, Iowa. It's a legacy of the old Wabash, and it's just a great little operation. But in my next life, I'm going to do that. But in investigating and in talking with people, I settled on basically a branch of the Crandic. Crandic was previously mentioned earlier in our railroad. That's the Cedar Rapids in Iowa. In our discussion, it's the Cedar Rapids in Iowa City. It is a Class 3 terminal railroad that primarily exists nowadays to serve the major industries in the Cedar Rapids area: Archer Daniel Midlands, Quaker Oats, a couple of steel mill, paper plant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Jason mentioned about Heartland Rail Corporation, how it was formed in 1984 to kind of take over by a group of shippers. One of the members of that original Heartland Rail was the Crandic, because they were trying to protect their shipping interests to make sure they weren't beholden to a single railroad. They wanted to maintain options, and so that's what created the Iowa Interstate. And so I was investigating this line, and then really realized that the two railroads are very intertwined, and they have been intertwined for both of their existence. There's this triangle of love here in eastern Iowa that connects Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, and Homestead, Iowa, which you have coming down from Cedar Rapids. You have the two main lines from the Crandic Railroad. The eastern line is the original electric interurban that connects, again, Iowa City to Cedar Rapids. The western line is the old Rock Island Amana a line that the Crandic bought in 1980 when they purchased, their remains for the Rock Island. But the other part that they purchased was the former Montezuma branch of the Rock Island that used to extend south of Iowa City down to Hills and Kelowna. And Andy Brown is on this chat. He can give me the details about exactly all the towns, but just this wonderful little branch line that still existed. But the Crandic picked up 8 miles of this former Montezuma Transit, extending from Iowa City south down to the town of Hills. And really the sole reason is what you're seeing right here. This is L&C Stutzman Ag Products. This is a major supplier to basically all manner of agricultural industries. They still receive by rail, and they just ship it out by truck at this point. Because this was there, this is basically what kept the Crandic alive heading south out of Iowa City, because you're moving tons of cars just from this one industry alone. Over the course of the 25 years since the Iowa Interstate started, basically the industries around the Crandic have scaled back, and so they're almost exclusively in Cedar Rapids now. There's nothing left on the main line once you come south of Cedar Rapids other than a plastics plant in North Liberty, and then this L&C Stutzman. At the time, this was a massive outlier. It was an island into itself, and so the Iowa Interstate, Crandic say, look, we've been partners, we've been working together. Why can't we figure this out? Long story, very, very short. Starting in 2012, the Iowa Interstate signs a 5-year lease for the stretch of the Crandic Railroad from Iowa City down to Hills to basically operate the line. And I said, this is perfect. This gives me the things that I like in railroading, the that single train, that short operation, again, focusing on those small industrial lines, which is something that I thoroughly enjoy. But it gives me a chance to try something a little bit different. If you go back and read stories of the Grimes line and kind of go from there, the Grimes line and Hills line, basically two sides of the same coin. But there's enough difference between the two that it was a chance to try new things for me. It was a chance to say, all right, I was successful with the Grimes line. I want to do something different, but I don't want to completely start over. I still want to take at the time, 15 years that I had been studying and operating and building some version of the Iowa Interstate to do that. And so this was a chance to say, all right, you can have your cake and eat it too. And so that led to the construction of what I affectionately refer to as the Hills line, and taking the exact same space that we used to have the Grimes line in the basement, now basically wrapping around into it's a 52-foot total run from Iowa City down to Hills. Total layout size is 12.5 feet by about 22 feet. This is roughly half of our basement. We're living in a classic American four-square, so this is the one side of it. Mostly because of the experiences with having to remove everything. It took me about 8 hours to tear down the railroad that I had spent 7 years building, and having to have access. If you look on the upper left-hand corner over here, this is the entrance to our mechanical and our laundry room. And so we still have to have access through this space to conduct basic house operations. Mm-hmm. And so that really led to the kind of the design, keeping everything as open, keeping everything as minimal as possible, so that it just, it can serve other purposes as it needs to. So what I want to do in my time is just kind of take you around the room, so to speak, and kind of show you some of the scenes that I've put together on this railroad. One thing I will talk about is, as you're looking at these photos, one of the things that I really wanted to do on this railroad was improve my overall layout photography. Since I started this railroad, in between starting the Grimes line and starting this railroad, focus stacking became into vogue. The ability to modify and adjust photos. I use, I'm a college professor officially, but I'm also a television producer in my day job, and so I have access to some toys and tools and technology that can make better. And so the ability to kind of take a photo and kind of add a little bit more uniqueness to it. And you really want to get gung ho in it, and just go to town.
There's some razzle dazzle.
Yeah,
right.
There's not. For the record, these are both the exact same photo. This is just a fair amount of time in Photoshop.
Well done.
To make it do that. I try as much as humanly possible to every photo that I try to share with the railroad has been adjusted or processed in some way. Not that I'm trying to be a railroad of lies, but just because it's a better way to show the railroad. I will mention that our mutual friend, Clark Probst, he came down to this look at it. I walked in for the first time, got to the bottom of the stairs, took one look at the railroad and said, well, it looks better in photos. And I promptly threw him out. So it was all good at everything. So, it's just a little
wow
amongst friends. So we'll go. But that's just, if you know Clark, that's just how he operates. And so we love him. So
James, we got a question from the
Sure.
audience here. I'm just gonna pipe in. Jerry Jackson says, could you repeat the size of your room there?
Sure. The layout is 12.5 feet. I'll back up to the slide. 12.5 feet by 22 feet is there. Obviously, we've got the stairwell in the bottom left-hand corner. From here, that cuts about 3 feet off that left-hand side. So it's about an 18-foot run on the left-hand side, and then it's the full 22 on the right-hand side.
So it's right about 50 feet worth of run.
That's what he said,
52 feet is if I run a measuring tape, or so to speak, I'm at 52 feet from point to point. So,
wow,
it's a good sized run.
Yeah, that's
it. It is. I will say that because of the operational aspects of it, and we'll talk about this in a second. It on one hand, it both doubles the length of the run, but it also kind of causes a little bit of issues. And so I'll talk about things that have worked and things that haven't worked on this railroad. We're going to start in the dead center of the line. This is the Maiden Lane interchange, and Jason was talking about the hill track, the old way of interchanging. This is where it happened. This is where the two railroads, the Iowa Interstate and the Krandic, used to come through there. And Kyle, who had to step off, mentioned his version of the hill track out east. There's also a hill track in Iowa City that goes from the Iowa City Yard down to this Maiden Lane interchange track, and that is traditionally where the two railroads would pass off their cars. It boots up or backs up right to US Highway 6, so they would block this all the time whenever they were doing interchange. By my era, the main interchange point had moved out west to Yoakum Connection at that point, and to their new yard at South Amana, at that point. And so that got all the big long trains are now out of town, and that everybody in Iowa who lives in Iowa City is considerably happier. However, because they then leased this line, this track became active again. And so what would happen is that the Iowa Interstate would basically use the Iowa City Yard as a glorified staging yard, basically a glorified, just kind of to build the trains that we were going to take down to hills, run it down this hill track, and then arrive here at Maiden Lane. And the choice was, do you go north or do you go south to start your day, depending on what you're working at that point. And so the result is that because we're starting in the middle of the railroad, we actually double the run. Because you come in the middle, you go to one end, you work your way all the way back to the other end, and then you come back to the middle again. The downside is that there's not a lot of running. There's not a lot of just open running. We get going, and it's all right. We got to instantly stop the second we start because we're getting ready to work at that point. So there is a trade-off in kind of if you're into that long running, that does not happen on this railroad. And so the trade-off is you just have to kind of live with it. But that's okay. But this is my version of the Maiden Lane interchange. It is as close to a concrete canyon, a brick canyon, whatever you want to call it, in Iowa at that point. What's interesting is that almost every single industry that's along Maiden Lane is in no way rail served. It is all just cutting through an industrial area of Iowa City, and so it's just trying to look and see what's there, and just trying to model. Okay, there's this building, there's this building, there's this building. The nice thing is that it's the backside of a lot of the buildings, because it's the part that backs up to the tracks. So they don't need to be hyperly detailed, because there's just not a lot of hyper detail to it. A lot of them are scratch built using photo wallpaper. The rest of them are Rick's products. It's almost like Iowa City had a Walther's catalog and was just thumbing through and say, we'll take one of those, and we'll take one of those, and we'll take one of those. And so a lot of the Rick's kits are almost carbon copied for what's actually there, and so it's just a lot of time on Google Earth and Google Street View, and trying to make field trips and saying, okay, I need one of these, and then you build it from there. The big compromise, because model railroading is nothing but compromise, is that the real Maiden Lane is arrow straight. I have to curve mine to get it into the corner. And so that's the trade-off, but I actually do like the look of the kind of the train coming around the corner type thing. It gives you a little bit more of that sense of scale, and kind of the really tight quarters there. I will say that I did think about putting a squealer from our good friends at Iowa Interstate on this curve. There is not a curve on the real one, so I didn't put one here, but had I modeled a little bit more of it for the curve across Gilbert Street that comes into Maiden Lane, then I absolutely would have put a squealer, because that's a phenomenally tight curve getting around the corner.
Hey, James.
Go ahead.
Hey, James.
Time, otherwise, I'm going to talk. So please jump in.
Yeah, James. You can still get a squealer, because the cars squeal and screech and they through switches.
They are on
right,
the
Jason?
list. And so,
Jason. Yeah, they're just as noisy on switches as they are going through the turnout. So you could still throw a couple out there.
I've tried to tell these guys that.
Okay, see, now you've got it from two actual prototype railroaders that telling you the same thing. So the next time we talk to you, I expect, and Scott Thornton can attest to this, I'll hold your feet to the fire. I expect to see a squealer on your layout.
I absolutely
so Mike,
go ahead, Jason.
Mike, if I understand
James.
correctly, you're basically telling another member of a different family that you expect something from them at this point. So
Hey.
might be some oranges coming your way here at this point.
Horse head in my bed.
Yeah.
No, anyway, believe me, I have plans for
That was
all-
good.
The technology that's available is just outstanding, and our
It is.
Nathan and I thank Scott every day for being a part of the Proto Throttle and making that, and obviously what Michael and Nathan do is nothing short of outstanding. And so the fact that they're a member of the family is helpful.
James, I have to interject and say that when we had the pleasure of operating on your layout one time and you presented your subwoofer effect, of course, I had to have that on my layout, and Jason got the disease too. So he has 2 on his layout now. So small layouts. Yes, small layouts. You can utilize a subwoofer and hook a decoder up to it, and then run it as a consist.
Right.
And your brain makes the shift, so you get those lower frequencies. So anyway,
and that's exactly what we have here in the basement. It works phenomenally well with a single train. It works phenomenally well. Again, it's just a subwoofer, so it's not there's still a sound decoder in the locomotive. Other than the prime mover, everything else still comes through the locomotive. So bells and horns and all the other sounds, because that's where it should come from. But by hooking it up to a subwoofer, just the prime mover up to a subwoofer, you kind of get that low rumble throughout the entire room. The first time I hooked it up, I was testing it. My wife was upstairs, and I just turned it on, and all of a sudden the whole house just goes, and then she's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Okay, I'm sorry, turning it down." So yeah, I can shake the walls if I really want to. Because this is a concrete canyon, because this is a brick canyon, one of the things that I also really tried to do was to make sure that the buildings were as close to scale as humanly possible. I'm a big fan of, obviously, Lance Midheim. I think we all are, that is on this channel. One of the big sayings he has is crop, don't compress. And so the idea is that if you have a space this big, don't take a scene this big and put it into a space this big. Only model this part of the full scene. So crop as opposed to cut. So what I basically said is, all right, I'm going to try to keep these buildings to as close to full size, and then where they go past where I can, I'm going to cut them off. So it's either a flat if it's up against the backdrop, or in the case of the fascia, you just extend the fascia up and kind of cover and blanket out a little bit. It also helps to make the railroad seem larger than it is, because your train's kind of playing peekaboo as it moves from building to building at that point. We're going to continue heading south, and we're going to approaching the Iowa River, the other Iowa River crossing, specifically with the Krandic here. We start at U.S. Highway 6. This is this is the largest road that the Hills Line crosses, one of 2 that has active grade protection, but it's surprising that it doesn't have. Am I the only one hearing that? Or somebody else hearing that?
I can hear that.
All right. So just make sure it wasn't me.
No, you're
okay.
good. Sorry.
Perfect. No worries. This is again one of 2 that has crossing protection. It's interesting that there are no gates on this one. There are no gates on any of it. And so this was the road that got blocked 1,000 times when the Iowa Interstate and the Krandic used to do all of their interchange at Maiden Lane. And so having those grade crossings, having those happen, that's anybody can identify a grade crossing, because that's the number one place we all interact with a train in some way, shape, or form. So I definitely wanted to include that. We then start getting into the valley, the Iowa River, kind of the flood plain that's leading into the Iowa River. Again, someone trying to, in the process of trying to improve this railroad from the bigger stuff, I had a list of, I want to do better on this, I want to do better on this, I want to do better on this. My scenery, specifically with my trees, was high on that list. Our good friend Tom Johnson basically is the master of it. And I said, what are you using? I'm using this. Fine, I'm just going to copy you. And so this is the scale leaf material from Scenic Express, which I does an outstanding outstanding job
Yeah.
of just making it there. And it's just a lot of fun to make trees, and there aren't a lot of just pure on scenery runs on this layout because it is very industrial at that point. But so when we can have the opportunity just to kind of show some verdant green of Iowa, then we take advantage of it. We then cross to what I think is the signature scene of my railroad, and that's the Crandix crossing of the Iowa River, also over a lattice truss bridge, just like Scott has on his Mylon branch. On the original, there are actually two bridges. There is this lattice truss bridge, and then just to the south is a Warren truss bridge. And so I originally wanted to try to figure out how to model both, and I just simply didn't have the space. Again, we crop, we don't compress. And so of the two, this was the harder one to build, but it's also the cooler one when it's all said and done. And so the first version I did, this was actually built from a Central Valley truss kit with the lattices replaced to put in, as opposed to the Warren trusses that they put in the kit. And then they the first version I built was just god awful horrible. This literally was like one of the first scenes that I ever built on the railroad, and it was my first attempt. And there are photos of it floating around, and I'm just embarrassed that I even put that garbage out from there. And so when I had the opportunity to kind of redo it, I took the advantage. So Scott, obviously, and our mutual friend Clark Cooper, who helped him with his versions of the lattice truss bridges, shared with me a prototype that they had built for his version, and I was able to basically reverse engineer another Central Valley kit to match that. So this is a Central Valley kit, but with just more evergreen styrene shapes than should probably be allowed for one person to purchase. And so I'm very happy with the second version of this. It has turned out from there. Adam, thank you very much. I will point out the water. This is another Scott Thornton recommendation. I think I think a lot of people, I had used Mod Podge for my water because that's a very popular thing to do. And Scott turned me on to golden gel, the gloss golden gel, which is a thicker version, and he showed me that, and I tore out my river and completely redid it at that point from the Mod Podge. So it's just a much better material, especially at that low angle there. So I'm phenomenally much more happier with this scene. I wish I obviously had room to do the south span, the south bridge, but we have to have compromises, as it were. Thanks to the magic of railroading, we magically transform 5 miles to the south in the space of about 4 feet, and we find ourselves in the town of Hills, Iowa. I mentioned that there's not a lot of open running on the Hills line. That's very much still the case. So when I do have the opportunity to do it, I want to make sure that I include it. So even just some very simple scenes of Iowa farm, when what you think, the stereotypical of what you think is Iowa. And so I was able to work in about a 3-foot stretch my modeled era is May of 2012, and so this is post-emergent corn. It's just starting to stick out of the ground, and so what I did was actually bought a whole set of Bluford Shops corn, and literally cut them all in half to get the height right, because I didn't want the full height that you would get with the kit. I just wanted the half height there, which that was a lot of work. I don't recommend anybody doing that. Corn, as I think we can all attest to, modeling corn in HO scale is an ever-loving pain, just because it's expensive, and when you buy the kit, you basically get about 3 inches when you're all said and done. And so God bless 3D printing. We can just start making our own corn and not worry about it. We then get into the town of Hills proper, and there are 2 major industries, only one of which is rail served. This is Hills Grain and Feed. It is not rail served. However, it bisects the railroad. There's actually a house track, runaround track that all the all the bins kind of sit in between the main, as it were, and this runaround track. So it's not a model industry. It's just there, but it's such a if you go to drive down Main Street in Hills, you cannot miss this. And so I had to include this, otherwise it wasn't going to be Hills in any stretch of the imagination. One little fun story here. I actually built that whole scene for a chapter in one of then Kalmbach's, now Firecrown's books, Building What's in a Photo. And basically they reached out to me and said, we're looking for contributors for this idea. What we want people to do is take a prototype photo and literally perfectly recreate it to the best of your ability, and then say, this is this is how I did this. Kind of building exactly as the name implies, building what's in a photo. And they reached out to me. This was this was the summer of 2019, and said, would you be interested in contributing? I said, I'd love to. How much time do I have? You have 18 months. Plenty of time. No problem. No problem. And then 2020 happened, and then all the joys that we're trying to forget from that time happened, and everything else happened, and I actually completely forgot about this, and got a email about a month before the deadline saying, hey, are you still contributing? We'd love to have it. And it was like, oh yeah, that. And so I built that whole scene in a week. Built that whole scene, photographed the whole scene, wrote the entire chapter. I would come, I would work, I would take care of the family, I'd come downstairs, and I just worked through the night building this scene. So deadlines are a wonderful motivator, I want to thank my good friends at Firecrown for giving me the opportunities that they've had, because I've gotten a lot done on the show because I was under some kind of deadline on a continuous basis with them, either with the articles or the books, or with the series on Model Road Video Plus, or it has helped kind of forward. I don't recommend that anybody do that, but it is possible to build a whole scene in a week if anybody really wants to give it a try. I'll plug real quick a good friend of the family, so to speak. I've already mentioned them. Is Iowa Scaled Engineering. Obviously makes some outstanding electronics. I think we're all fans of the Proto Throttle on this right now, and I hope everybody on the chat is as well. They also have their subsidiary Grain Belt models that makes grain bins and other types of stuff. The bin that you're seeing directly in front of them, if you go to their website and search, this is what is known as the Hills bin, because it is a perfect copy of this small little 18-foot diameter bin that is at the far north of this Hills Grain and Feed complex, and they built it. And I said, I'm obviously going to get one of those, because that's perfect. So sometimes it's nice to have friends in low places, so to speak, to help you out as much as possible. We now reach the reason for existence for this entire railroad, and that is Eldon C. Sussman Incorporated. And as I mentioned earlier, without this, the Hills line does not exist. If this business ever goes away, there is no reason to keep this line open in any way, shape, or form. This is an absolutely massive complex. This is my warts and all unmodified look at the entire complex. From where we're standing all the way to the back wall is 14 feet and length. And so it was just a matter of building this as much as humanly possible to scale, or at least keeping the proportions of all the buildings right, so that when we did have to, because we couldn't fit the whole thing in, but when we did scale it down, it at least still felt right. I haven't even shared this on the blog yet at this point, so you guys are getting a little preview of kind of what this scene turned out and looked like. Stutzman is broken into three major parts. The first is the main office building and warehouse. This is primarily a truck served facility. It's not a rail served facility. However, there are 2 car spots on this warehouse, primarily to receive bag salt in box cars. Sometimes they'll occasionally get a hopper there, but they basically that's where the runaround track is. So they kind of just run past this warehouse to position for the southern structures there. But it's again, it isn't. You drive into Hills, you drive down Main Street, you cannot miss this structure. It is massive. And so if I was going to do the Hills line, I had to include it in some way, shape, or form. As I mentioned, it's primarily it's primarily a truck served industry on that warehouse. And so it just, I hated giving up so much space, but I had to, because that's what's there. And so We're not going to pretend that it's not this giant monstrosity that's just exists. Once you get south, you actually get into the rail-served portions, and there are two parts of it. On the northern part of the southern end of the line this is the Stutzman elevator here, and this is where all the dry products, so the hoppers, the potash, the some of the ammonia, just any of the dry products that they received. They're spotted over this grate right here, and then they're pulled up into the elevator and they're spread out into various commodities as they need to. This entire structure was taken with photos taken by our mutual friend Murray Butler, who lives and is an avid biker, and he was biking through hills, and he one day said, "Hey, do you want me to get some photos for it?" Like, absolutely. And so he literally just kind of went down, and I'm sure trespassed and did God knows what. I don't want to ask, but he just basically took photos of this structure, and I just printed them out and used them as wallpaper to give as accurate as it could possibly be. And then to the southern part, the absolute southern end of the line, is the wet location. This is where the tank cars show up with the fertilizers and the other chemicals and everything. This is a combination of Walthers and Rick's products. A shout out to our good friend Alex Young and his auger that he submitted to Mini Prints, which was very early in Mini Prints existed, and is like, well, I've got to help support my friend Alex here, and so it makes a little cameo appearance here. But again, each one of these there are multiple spots, specific spots. So a commodity has to go at a specific spot. And so it's a little bit of, even in this very simple track arrangement, it's just a single spur and a runaround track, but you're spending 35, 40 minutes, switching this, because you're pulling and adjusting and getting them on the exact right spot where they need to be. And so it's the balance for the railroad is definitely off. You definitely spend more time on the south side, on the right hand of the room, than they do on the left hand side of the room. But again, without Stutzman, none of this happens. None of this absolutely occurs. One little fun thing is that on the very, 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 this is the dead end. That's the red board there at the end of the line at milepost 33.6. Eldon has had this is a Plymouth. It's actually from the Union Railroad of Oregon. It's Plymouth number 1. They purchased it 1988, 1989. And to the best of my knowledge, Jason, Colin, call me a liar at this point, they put it on the end of the track, and it has never run at that point. It has literally sat there the entire line. Obviously, they bought it to use it as a critter to move cars around, and it never did anything. And so I saw this and said, well, I've got to do my best to try to include it.
Well
and
done.
So I was able to come across a Walthers obviously came up with
that looks cool
with a Plymouth, and I was able to find it's a DC version of it, and I literally bought it and gutted it. It took out all the the stuff and just weathered it within an inch of its life, and looked at photos and said, oh, I can try to do this, I can try to do that, and still make it work. I believe they finally sold it, but I can neither confirm or deny it at that point. But at least in my era, it was still very much. So this is the absolute southern end of the line there, and kind of the little tribute. And you just basically buy a cheap locomotive and you weather it an inch of its life and you bury it in weeds, and it works perfectly.
I love that.
To go from there. So we'll go back to Iowa City again. They would run all the way to the south. They would work, and then they would work all their way back. And if they were done, they would go up Maiden Lane and they call from there. But if they had to work to City Carton, they had to go through Iowa City. I will mention that if you look at the railroad plan, you'll see these little breaks every so often. This is the electrical panel up here in the upper right-hand corner. So obviously, I needed to leave access for code to be able to get to the electrical panel. And then, as I mentioned earlier, on the left-hand side, that's the access to the mechanical room, the laundry room. And so to help bridge those gaps, I built these very simple lift outs. The whole plan of the Hills line is basically based off of a plan by Ian Rice called the Linked Up Logger, which basically was 3 separate vignettes connected with these these undetailed, just very simple, basic plans. And that's kind of what I did, is I took 3 distinct scenes from the entire Hills line, and then when I needed to jump a couple of miles, I just said, all right, that's where these lift outs are going. And so when you cross across these lift outs, you're jumping forward in space a mile, mile and a half, sometimes 5 miles, depending on what it is. And so that's how the railroad kind of stays connected, but we can still do that. And these are stupid, simple lift outs, just with using DC plugs to throw power to it. When you get back into Iowa City, the game of peekaboo kicks in at that point. Again, trying to navigate through all these, this is a former interurban, so you've got tight corners, a lot of grade crossings, tight connections. You're trying to hold it. We cross over Ralston Creek, which is one of the tributaries of the Iowa River, which runs through Iowa City. Again, the train's just kind of peeking out. I really wanted it to be like you had to look for it to find it. Kind of the logic being you were a rail fan, you were chasing it, through Iowa City, trying to get around all these buildings. We come through Lafayette Street, which is classic interurban running. The spur that's coming towards you, that is Nagel Lumber. That is the third industry that was served by the Hills Line. Did not receive a single car in the entire time that the Iowa Interstate had the lease. And so, all right, I'm going to include the spur, but it doesn't. It just comes to the front of the benchwork and stops at that point. But we, before I get to the last thing, one quick note. Every single backdrop on the railroad, A, it's all a photo backdrop, and B, with the exception of one, every single one is taken from Google Street View. So instead of having to try to go to Iowa City and get the photos that I need that are in the right time of year or the right angle and stuff, just modeling from afar using a computer. You use Google Earth. You can save Street View images. We were able to print them out, and trim them and cut and make it work. But that's the view up Clinton Street in Iowa City, which if you can see all the way in the back, that's the Iowa Interstate main line as it runs from back there. And so it's the ability to model from afar without ever stepping into having to. You can model from anywhere at this point without actually doing that. We then get to the other customer, and that on the Hills Line, and that's City Carton Recycling, and this is where all the compromise kicked in. Basically, City Carton, with all due respect, is the other industry. It is always the bridesmaid, never the bride. When it came to the Hills Line, it was still in 2012 was still in existence. In 2015, was purchased by Republic, and about a year later, mysteriously burned to the ground. So you read into that however you want to, but it's not
with this crew. I ain't asking no questions. I'm not asking no questions.
I don't know nothing.
Sometimes you just got to put them. You got to light a match. That's all I got to say about that point. So, but on the prototype, it is a giant convex curve. The line curves away to head back north to run under the Iowa River. I had to make the compromise. Mine's a concave curve, so it's turned the wrong way. City Carton Recycling is the whole building is absolutely the structure is absolutely massive. It's multiple buildings. I just did not have anything to include other than the receiving warehouse. So what this does is obviously it's a recycling company. They collect recycled paper, they box it up, and they ship it out to plants out in the West Coast, usually a Weyerhaeuser in Washington State or a couple other ones. They in a previous life did send them up to Cedar Rapids, the paper company there. That didn't exist in my model house. So a lot of them are traveling out west on Joe's fourth sub to be sent over to the Union Pacific and gone from there. So even though it's nothing compared to the real thing, but I had to be able to include it. I wanted to be able to include it. So this is the compromise. And then we end at the northern part of the line, and we're right back where we started again. And this is the crossing of the Iowa Interstate over both the Iowa River and over the industrial spur. My original plan was to power the dummy track so I could take photography, and I realized I didn't really need to do that because it makes no sense. But it is nice to be able to stage locomotives and get that classic over-under shot without having to sit there and holler and hope that you're actually going to get an over-under a shot at that point. So that, this, again, the big brother, little brother, the main line versus branch line, I think this sums up kind of everything that you see. If you fell asleep, if you had to step off, if you're watching this later, if you want to ask questions, all the details on the Hills Line are available in Great Mountain Railroads 2025, which I got on the cover of the Rolling Stone, which was a long time goal of mine to that, and grateful for everybody's assistance and help. I would not have been as successful as I am without the help of this group and my family, so to speak. But then again, as always, if you want to keep up to date, I hope you join us over at thehillsline.com. So that's my song and dance. And I know I talked way too long and way too fast because that's what I do. I'm a college professor. So if you have any questions, I'll gladly answer them now. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Colin because I've taken too much time.
No, you did just fine, James. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. And just I do want to, while we got everyone still here, I do want to just give a shout out and more of an administrative note. So all of the different areas, the socials, the websites, and all that good stuff, I did include that into the show notes for this evening. So if you go into the description on YouTube, you can go ahead and click the links that I've provided there, and you can get to everyone's socials here, Facebook groups, websites, all that good stuff, so you can connect and ask questions later. So thanks, James. It broke my heart when the Grimes line succumbed to the poopy monster, and
Yeah.
I remember reading the blogs, and I'm like, oh my God, this can't be happening. But this is certainly the phoenix that rises from the ashes, and you've done a fantastic job. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you very
that.
much. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
All right, so we're on to Colin now.
Yes, sir. Let's do this. I'm gonna
to
share my screen.
All right.
Okay, sure.
So yeah, just again, before Colin gets going here, all of those links are in the show notes this evening. If you have questions, again, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll get them up so we can answer them on the show live tonight.
Excellent. Well, hey, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Andy, for having me. My respects to the Godfather and the rest of the family. It is so good to be with you guys here tonight. Now is a great time to take a bathroom break. If you've been, meaning to grab something to eat, probably now is a good time. My layout is nothing like what you've seen so far in the previous layouts. I really don't know why I'm here, to be honest. So let me go ahead and jump into
welcome.
my attempt at a layout. So first of all, I don't know why all of you aren't modeling the Iowa Interstate. The Iowa Interstate is the greatest railroad that ever lived and still lives. Look at all the things that you could get by modeling the Iowa Interstate. We've got steam locomotives, we've got cabooses, we've got slugs, we've got Alcos, we've got GEs, we've got EMDs. We have everything that you could ever want. Grain, unit trains. We've got it all. Passenger stuff. So this is the reason that I model the Iowa Interstate. My question to you is, why are you not doing it? Join the family. Everyone's doing it. It's the cool thing. So before I get into my presentation, there is a little slight caveat. What you're about to see, there's one scene on my layout that is pretty much done. It's the scene you see here for the Iowa River. The rest of my layout, unfortunately, looks a lot like this. That's pretty much just because I have 3 kids, 6 and under, and we just play with a lot of brio. So you're going to see a lot of wood.
That's awesome.
You're going to see a lot of like rough landforms that might, supposed to look like trees, but really, I'm sorry, it's not anything like what you just saw in James's layout. So apologies to the family. We're gonna talk real quick about what's my layout. My layout is set in September of 2008. The reason I picked 2008 is because most of the stuff you just saw in that previous picture with all that glorious Iowa Interstate equipment, that was around in 2008. 90% of it, I would say, was around. So you got so many great things to choose from. September is just because my birthday's in September, my wedding anniversary is in September, and it's a great way for me to remember to buy something nice for my wife. So I just always remember September is an important month. If you notice, my layout is a double deck layout. The layout space, I guess there's dimensions on here. I really don't memorize them, but yeah, 27 by 23, kind of like an L shape. And my lower deck is set at 54 inches, which I know is high, but I like to be able to get as close to eye level as possible. And my upper deck is at 68 inches. So only Shaquille O'Neal and I are able to roughly see what's going on. And most people would say, Colin, you're crazy. And you'd be right. But what's important is that the upper deck is mostly just like mainline running. So there's not a lot of switching going on. So I've thought about everybody who's not Shaquille O'Neal. I have to give my thanks to Clark Cooper. His name's been mentioned before. He's the one who drew up these beautiful plans. And so I'm going to kind of take you around the layout, show you a lot of plywood, tell you all the things I'm going to build, and then we'll get back to Joe Atkinson and real modeling. So let's start with Yoakum. Yoakum is an interchange point between the Iowa Interstate and the Krandic. You've just heard about this railroad. And so really Yoakum connection, the Iowa Interstate runs east-west. And then originally there was a Milwaukee Road, which then became the Rock Island, which then, as James said, was eventually purchased by Krandic. Then there's a north-south line. And the dotted line that you see there, the yellow dotted line, was actually abandoned after a while. And the Iowa Interstate and the Krandic worked together to build a interchange point. And this, once again, gets back to what Jason was saying. They used to interchange in Iowa City. They used to, as James said, screw up traffic for like 30 minutes and make everybody mad. And then they moved it out here to Yoakum in the middle of nowhere, and it allowed them to interchange, basically, get onto the other person's railroad without having to stop traffic. So they built this wonderful Y. I've tried to build the Y. I've got a representation of it. It takes up so much freaking space, but it is the most beautiful thing, and I absolutely love it. And you're going to see why here in a second. Notice there's a little X, a white X that says power assisted switch. That's one of the reasons that I wanted to model the Yoakum connection. So the power assisted switch is a way that the train crews were able to move onto the other person's railroad without having to stop the train. Normally a mainline switch like that, you'd have to, approach it. There'd be a dispatcher that would control it. Or maybe if you were just out running on the railroad, you'd have to stop the train and hop off the engine to line the switch to the correct route that you want to travel on. That would have been fine for trains that were heading to Cedar Rapids because that's a grade down. But coming from Cedar Rapids and then going onto the Iowa Interstate was a severe grade, and they were worried about trains stalling. And so they installed this power-assisted switch that basically allows crews from the locomotive cab to dial up a tone. And once they dial up the tone, it will throw the switch, or it'll line the switch for the correct movement. And then it actually provides an indication on the signal. The signal does nothing in terms of telling you whether to go or not go. It just basically says, hey, the switch is lined for you, and here's the alignment of the switch. So the actual signal that you see here, the prototype photo is there. I scratch built my own version of the switch. And thanks to some very beautiful 3D printed parts, I was able to replicate that and make it do exactly the same thing that the real switch does. And then you see there's a picture here of a Canadian Railway, basically a Canadian GEVO. It's got a little locomotive radio in it. And the locomotive radio, a friend of ours, Alex Young, you'll hear his name a lot here. Alex Young designed a 3D printed locomotive radio faceplate. And then he did all the programming so that what I can do is when I'm running my trains or when my crews are running, as they approach the switch, just like on the prototype, they have to use the little keypad and they have to enter a specific dial tone. And then that talks to the signal and also talks to my switch machine, and it lines everything up for whatever route you want. And then there's a speaker built in, because on the actual prototype, the locomotive, you would hear back on the radio the signal saying, basically the switch has been lined, and it confirms everything for you. So you get your visual indication, and you also get to hear that voice. So if you want to see a video of that, my Facebook page for the layout actually has a video showing all of that, actually, going through the steps. It's a very cool process, and I'm very thankful to Alex for all the time he spent designing that. We're going to move. We're on the upper deck still, but we're going to talk about three areas. We're going to talk about Homestead, Oxford, and Kent Park. And so these three areas, unfortunately, they're not modeled in any final format, but these are pictures of what I'm hoping that they'll look like. So if we start up at Homestead, Homestead is nothing more than a siding. It really wasn't used a lot, that, as far as I know, Jason may be able to speak to this. It wasn't used a lot for trains meeting, but they would usually store cars on the Homestead siding. So it's a great place that I'll be able to store cars. And then if you look at Oxford had an elevator, and then they actually had a spur that was used mostly, I believe, for transloading things like salt and fertilizer and things like that. And then Kent Park has this beautiful curve, which is a great rail fanning spot on my subdivision of the railroad, as well as a defect detector. So once these guys at Iowa Skilled Engineering come out with their great defect detector, I'm going to be able to have something that will actually be able to, tell my crews whether their train has any defects or not. So it's a very cool part of the railroad, in my opinion. We're now going to head a little bit further. We're on the lower level now, and we're going to head to Vernon. There's a spur at Vernon, and there's also a spur at Beiser Lumber. Neither of these are modeled yet on my layout, but I wanted to give you some pictures to make you, see what I'm trying to shoot for. Beiser Lumber has this lumber facility that receives boxcars and center beam flats. And then Vernon is actually the location where they would store the Hawkeye Express. And being a Hawkeye fan, I had to have the Hawkeye Express. It was this passenger train that was used to take people from outside Iowa City, literally to the steps of the football stadium for the University of Iowa. And as a Hawkeye fan and somebody who likes railroading, how could you not have a train with a Hawkeye Tiger on it? So very, very cool thing to have, and something I hope to have in this. Okay, so now we're getting to like the big meat and potatoes, right? This is the Iowa City Yard, and as was discussed before, the Iowa City Yard has a great, size for a model railroad because it's really not that big. So I've actually modeled it track for track, not necessarily in length, but at least track for track. Every track that's on the prototype is replicated on my layout. So there's a picture here on the left-hand side that Alex Young took from, I believe, either a helicopter or a plane. He was up in the air, I know that. And you can see things like the engine house. You can see there's the business cars, and there's the Dodge Street Bridge that Jason mentioned earlier, where a picture was taken from. And my plan is to model every single part of that. I've got the engine house. I've got the sand tower. I've got plans for there's a tank car that's used as a fueling facility. So I've got plans to model everything basically that you see in this photo. You'll notice there's a line of cork that's kind of peeling off the edge of the layout. That's the hills line that both Jason and James referred to. So if I wanted to interchange cars, for example, with James, that would be a way that I could do it. We could pretend that we were sending cars down the hills line, and those cars would be heading out to Hills or to City Carton.
Hey, Colin, I got a question about that.
Yes, please.
Hills track. Are you going to eventually maybe extend that?
Oh my gosh, Jason, I would love to. And the guys, my local modeling crew have very much encouraged me to. So there's a chance, and if we put it at a significant enough grade, it might be able to duck under the other bench work across the aisleway. And wouldn't that be cool? And then we could, haul butt, I believe, as they say, and bring a cut of cars up there. That would be very cool.
Well, we burnt the bridge down. When I worked there, that bridge out on the Mana line burned down, and then so we had to interchange
there you go
that way for a couple of years. And so if something ever happened out west, they would have to interchange that old way, which was really cool.
Yeah,
with the Kranich pushing on the rear and the Iowa Interstate pulling on the other end to get up the hill.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's a really cool. I mean, that's what I grew up as a kid watching, that interchange, and I was just fascinated that you guys could do that. So absolutely, if I can make that work, I will definitely make it work. The next scene is the only completed scene on the layout. It's the Iowa River Bridge. This is all Scott Thornton's fault. So I just want you to remember that. It's the actual bridge is a 642-foot 8-span bridge, and I decided I was going to model it 100%. I wanted it to be full length. So what you see in front of you here is the actual 8 spans with a little bit of a trestle off to the one side, the east side. And once again, I have to thank all of my local modeling crew, the Iowa Interstate Mafia. They were very helpful in getting this to where you see today. And I absolutely love it. I would agree with James. This to me just is the Iowa Interstate. And so this is my favorite part of the layout because it's the only part that's actually scenic. But looking at 4 SD38-2s, you know, crossing the bridge, just tiptoeing across, this doesn't get any better to me. So I'm an absolute huge fan of this scene, and I'm very, very happy with how it came out. The next area that you're going to see is what James was talking about. This is the Krandic trackage that's underneath the east side of the bridge. And so I just wanted to point out how cool it is to, you know, go in and detail a scene. You can see there's graffiti on the abutment there on the right-hand side. That's the actual graffiti. Alex Young went out and took pictures and then was able to send me those pictures, and we turned them into decals. So that's 100% what you would see, all the good and bad parts. And so to me, it just captures the essence of Iowa City and just makes you feel like you're there. And we've got a boxcar here waiting to head to City Carton. So it just adds a really nice feel. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the other side of the layout, which is the Riverside Drive. This is the portion where Riverside Drive cuts underneath the west side. And so you can see in this picture, the other side, the west side abutment, is a much more modern abutment that required some special creative work with plaster and lots of fun with weeds and things like that. So very, very cool to work on. And then I've got some current projects. This is the last thing I'm going to talk about. There's some things that I've been working on. I mentioned to my friend Alex Young one day, I'd really like to have a way to throw my switches on my layout, but like maybe just instead of a push button, we have like a lock that we can put on a push button. And the next thing I know, he comes up to me and he's like, well, what do you think of this? And I'm like, you know, my jaw drops, my eyes are wide as saucers. And I'm like, what does this do? And what he put together is he 3D printed a switch stand that uses a small screen, and that's connected to, in essence, an Arduino. It's a ESP32 board. And then it's got a potentiometer inside of it, and it allows you to actually throw the switch, and then the screen changes to show you that it's gone from the mainline position to the normal position to the reverse. So I'm going to try to play a video here to let everybody see what it actually looks like. Right now, you can see on the left-hand picture, that's the normal position. So this is what you end up doing when you throw the switch.
No way.
What did I just watch?
Yeah, yes way, Mike. Yes way. And the coolest part about it is that throws the switch, you know, however far away, which I use Walther's servo switch machines. And that screen can be changed to what Alex has done is he's gone in and he's like taken pictures of the actual targets, and then he's modeled those. And so we can add like the numbers, if it's a yard track that has a number, or if maybe there's like a, you know, some bird crap on one side, we'll put some white little bird droppings on it. He's done a fantastic job, and it honestly is the coolest thing in the freaking world. I don't care what anybody says. And I love these little padlocks that we can attach. And I'm probably going to annoy most of the operators on my layout because they're going to have to carry around a little switch key. But that's okay with me because that's how I like to operate. So
you just ruined my life.
No, I'm not trying to. I promise, Andy.
No, you just did. Like I spent It's awesome.
I quit.
Really cool.
I literally quit. I'm done.
You can't, Mike. No, the show must go on. Do it for the Godfather. Okay.
Today, on this day of his podcast.
Godfather just quit.
Oh God.
I can't do this anymore. This is just.
We'll go away from
beautiful.
It. Okay, it's okay.
That's amazing.
The family kills everybody with technology.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Another current project in the Iowa City yard, there was an ex-Chessie boxcar that was taken off its trucks at some point and used as a storage facility. And this thing was haphazardly painted by the Iowa Interstate in a silver paint that eventually wore off over time. So its original, you know, Chessie reporting marks are living underneath. And it was just, if you're going to model the Iowa City yard, you have to model this boxcar. It's right front and center on my layout. So I got an Intermountain kit, and I've super detailed the thing to match the prototype. I'm currently in the process of weathering it. I've already painted it. I've already added the decals for the chassis system. And so hopefully that'll turn out half as good as the real thing and be something to be proud of. But I just thought it was too cool not to model and too cool not to share with everybody, because it's a neat box car.
Do you know what the number of that box car was?
I do. 21,470, Mike.
You know what?
Uh-oh.
I have a chassis boxcar like that in S scale, I think, but I'm not sure what the number is. That gives me an amazing idea for that car.
Yeah.
There you go.
And I think, as you'll see in the Godfather's layout, this is a common theme on the Iowa Interstate, where they just dropped chassis boxcars off at different locations and said, here, it's a yard office, or here, it's storage. So it's a very cool part of the Iowa Interstate history, and I love the fact that it still hangs around in Iowa City as a storage area. And
well, for what it's worth, Mike, the one in Atlantic, Iowa, is 21,054. That was never painted silver, but yeah, these things are all over the railroad.
And you guys are going to cost me more money.
That was all part of the plan, Mike.
I kind of figured.
Yeah, we've been sent here to do some bidding. Yes. And the last thing before we turn it over to the Godfather is just the current project also is the Iowa City Depot. The Rock Island is known for these depots. They're very common across the whole Rock Island system. And this one in Iowa City, you can't model Iowa City without having this depot. Mm-hmm. And once again, Alex Young not only took the prototype photo on the left that's from my era of 2008, but he also spent, I believe it was 80 hours designing the entire depot, and then 3D printed it. And it's printed in 2 sections because it's so freaking huge. But I think it takes like 28 hours or something to print the whole thing. And he's printed all the windows and all the other parts. And so my hope is to do it justice and paint it and weather it and add everything. And then I've been working on the train order signal, which is not used anymore by the Iowa Interstate, but is a really cool feature to have. And I'm also working on the baggage cart, which is, you can kind of see in Alex's photo underneath the window there. And I've been trying to model its dilapidated form and how it currently sits, because it's just a forgotten little item. But if anybody knows anything about Iowa City and the depot, they'll always know that. So with that, that's the end of my section. And I, once again, just thank everybody for letting me talk.
That's awesome.
Yeah, fantastic, Colin.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great layout, Colin. I mean, I worked there, and it's just I'm excited to see. That's where I worked, the yard I worked, and
yeah,
it's gonna be fun to see how that turns out.
Yeah, you'll have to come and operate and tell me how it works. I like that.
It's not the right number, but it's.
Oh, yep.
There you go.
Okay. So you're an Iowa Interstate modeler now, Mike. It sounds good. Welcome to the family.
Great. Oh, boy.
All right. Now the Godfather.
Yeah.
Man himself.
I really, this is not even fair putting me at the end of everything that we've just seen. I don't stand a chance. I'll be on a positive note. I'll be putting everybody to sleep just before bedtime. So,
no, sir,
not true. Not true.
I apologize. I've been having some issues tonight and had to go off video to try to address those. But Mike and Andy, hey, thank you very, very much. I've just had a blast here tonight, and appreciate you having us all on and making this happen. This has been a great time. Right off the bat, I want to give a quick shout out to some other friends and honorary Iowa Interstate Mafia members, Matt Fricks, Ryan Crawford and Isaac Fabris. These guys don't yet model the right railroads, but I really enjoy their participation in our group, and I let time get away from me on a previous podcast without mentioning them. So I wanted to try to get back in their good graces again. So my interest in the Iowa Interstate came about right at 25 years ago. Actually, it'll be 25 years next month. During a June 2000 visit that my wife and I made to Atlantic, Iowa, that you see in this Dan Munson photograph. We kind of stumbled upon this yard and ended up following the line east to Wyoto and Anita. And once I got home, I was almost immediately jumping in and getting started with researching the Iowa Interstate. I modeled the UP at that time, and within weeks, I was tearing down a layout that I had started and making plans to switch over to the Iowa Interstate instead. And I cannot say enough about the friendliness of Iowa Interstate employees. I've been amazed through the years at the great friendships I've been blessed with through those employees. Those led to just a ton of emails and visits. I've taken full advantage of kind of the open door policy that they've had out here, and made visits for photos and measurements and just about everything you could imagine. And they've always been very, very gracious to me. Now, I should qualify that with the fact that the majority of that research took place 20 some years ago, and prior to the yard cameras and so on that exist today. So different times now, but yeah, they have been just super good to accommodate my hobby. And the rail fanning, it's really given an opportunity to get kind of an up close and personal view of things that, short of actually working for the railroad, I can't imagine having under any other circumstances. Seeing not only what they did, but being able to really study how they went about it, how customers were switched, what procedures were followed, things of that nature. And among the folks who've been especially good to me, Alan Hunt from day one has just been an open book as far as answering questions and so on. I think the two of us in the last 25 years, our emails have to number well into the thousands. And he's just been super accommodating about all of that. More recently, I just finally jumped on Facebook like 3 years ago and started a layout group for the layout that I'm currently building, the second Iowa Interstate layout, and John Knutson and Dan Bass, both John's retired now, but both had been engineers on the fourth sub and have played a really active role on that layout group, and have again just been great about being open to questions and telling me how things worked and why. The same was true for our mutual friend Steve Sorensen until his passing a couple of years ago. So can't thank all those folks enough. as I said, this is what I'm currently working on is the second Iowa Interstate layout. My first one that I was building from 2000 to our move in 2020 represented the westernmost 50 miles of the railroad, the portion from Council Bluffs to Atlantic. That was about twice the size of the current one, and it represented like half of the railroad was very focused on urban operations within Council Bluffs and heavy interchange activity with the UP. The photo here is at UP's pool yard, and then the other half of the layout that we'll see in a moment here was much more rural. So these are a few glimpses of that first layout. This is Bluffs Yard, the Iowa Interstate's facility in Council Bluffs.
Wow.
This is the
there's the green weenie.
There's a green weenie. Look at that.
There you go. Yeah, we can't let the evening go without
the green bean.
We started with it. We might as well end with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a favorite, and for me anyway. Clearly not for Jason.
Jason
in there
trying to pick up chicks in a Jeep.
I know. I mean, if the cab had been patched properly, like it was here, then that wouldn't have been a concern at all.
I'm personally an 850 fan.
There you go. That's another good choice for sure.
Seeing as how I kind of cut my teeth, I was a brakeman on the Green Bay and Western.
Oh yeah.
So I'm very familiar with the 323. Thank you very much.
I mentioned Steve Sorensen. Steve was also a model railroader. He was a regular on the Council Bluffs job, and Steve loved getting the 850 and the 900 especially on the Bluffs jobs, because he said they accelerated and braked like Porsches, and he was a total foamer at work. He was really a neat guy.
That's cool.
But yeah, this is the Bluffs Engine House on the eastern edge of Council Bluffs. This is what they call the High Bridge, and this is where we just start to get out of the city. The yard that we just saw is just around the corner to the right of this photo.
Are all of you guys good at building bridges?
I honestly, bridges terrified me. I can't tell you how long I put off these bridges on the West End layout, because the idea of cutting a perfectly good main line, cutting this huge gap in it in order to build a bridge just seemed completely counterintuitive. So it took a long time for me to get over that, and yeah, it's like anything else in the hobby. You know, once you just dig in and start to take those baby steps, it doesn't seem so bad.
Every one of your guys' layouts, bridge scenes, are absolutely stunning to look at.
Well,
every one of you, even yours, Scott, even yours. I'm teasing you, but I mean, honest to God, you guys are good at this bridge stuff.
Thank you very much. Mine does not compare to what we've been seeing here. I mean, Colin, yeah, we'll get a good laugh out of my comparison to Colin's Iowa City Bridge here in a few minutes. But Yeah, this is for me. This was kind of the scenic highlight of that first layout. As we move a bit further east, this is a Murray Bauschlicker photo at Hancock with an eastbound passing by on the main line beyond, and this was really the only significant grain elevator that I had available to model on that first layout. But it was the operations surrounding this that really kind of set the hook for what I ended up doing with the fourth sub with the current layout. Last view of that first one. This is my granddaughter running the very last train on that first layout. This is the day before teardown began, and it was kind of some neat foreshadowing here, because this photo on the left of this photo is Atlantic Yard, and Atlantic is the one place that both of my layouts have had in common. That first attempt went from Council Bluffs to Atlantic, and you see the eastern portion of it here in the yard. Second attempt picks up with this yard and covers the next 24 miles to the east from Atlantic to Adair. And so one thing that all of the rail fanning, all the access to information and everything has really drilled into my head is that I absolutely wanted this layout to be track for track replication of the prototype. You can't go out there and watch them switch and come home and not be able to replicate what you've been seeing. And thankfully, the schematic for this portion of the railroad was very straightforward, and so it made that very much within reach. The Iowa Interstate pretty much did the work for me as far as layout planning, because what you have here is exactly what I wanted to model, and so my only job was to bend and twist this as necessary to get it to fit the 18 by 20 space we had in the new house, and then connect the two ends with a shared staging yard. So this is what I ended up with as a result of that exercise. As you see, the staging yard is in the upper right corner there. Everything else in the layout plan is exactly what you just saw in that schematic, just twisted as needed to make it fit. It's essentially just a big loop around the room with the Atlantic spur being that lone branch peninsula to the right, but there's a drop leaf entry at the lower right corner there, and just a very straightforward plan. I should mention before we move on, everything on this layout is viewed from the perspective of being on the north side of the track. So as you hear me make reference to east and west, please understand east is always to your left, west is always to your right, and so just to avoid any confusion there. As we go around the room, starting at the easternmost portion of the railroad at Adair, just coming out of staging there. This is a Craig Williams photo at Adair with grain extra pulling out of the elevator. I believe they were pulling 50 loads out that day. The track that they're on was actually the Rock Island's original main line through this area, and the current main line to the right there was built in the early 1950s as a cutoff to address the many curves and grades that were on the original route. So when that was completed, that original line was for the most part done away with, but in Adair, the trackage remained in order to continue to serve those local customers. And this elevator, West Central, is the only customer in Adair, but they're a big shipper. Typically, we'll load out 50 car units, and so that's that. This is Adair on the layout. Again, the main line along the right there. Staging is in the back. On both layouts that I've built, I've been a big fan of open staging, but I build the fascia so that it's about 6 inches above track level. It extends about 6 inches above. So it gives you that ease of access with adding and removing cars on the layout. But at the same time, it maintains that illusion of distance that that staging is meant to provide. So both ends of staging in front of both yard ladders on both ends of that staging yard, those sections are just lift outs. They're removable, actually just held in by L brackets in the layout surface, and they'll be scenic to hide them at some point. But that's I've been really happy with that arrangement. Next up to the west is the town of Anita. Again, another one elevator town. It is a much different style of elevator, though, than what we saw at Adair. Very much Tom Johnson-esque sort of elevator here. The original structure here in the middle started out as just a typical country wood construction elevator that was later sheathed and then grew over time as their business grew, adding more bins, more dryers, elevator legs everywhere you look. By my count, in the time period I model, which is May 2005, this elevator consisted of 28 different structures or elevator legs or dryers. It was just a really interesting complex with tons of detail. I mean, I could I may be spending the rest of my life just detailing these models when the time comes to actually get started there. Another interesting feature, I think, in Anita, in the upper right corner here, those are old coal sheds, which I think is kind of cool that they actually still exist to this day and are used by a local electric utility for equipment storage. So again, something I think it'll be a lot of fun to model here. And this is a photo from Schneider Corporation's Beacon site. If you're fortunate enough to have a prototype that is that exists in a county that subscribes to this service, that is the best the best service I've ever found for aerial photos of anything. I am very, very thankful that both counties that my prototype run through are in this database, and it is just crazy the level of detail, the quality of the photos. The only bad part is that they only date back to 2008, and I modeled 2005. But man, I will take it. I mean, they've got more stuff on here than I ever thought I would find, and it's just the resolution of the photos is awesome, and just seriously check that out. It's really been a godsend.
What is the name of it?
It is Schneider Corporation. I'll have to look up the link and share that, but I will. Andy or Mike, is there a way I could I could add it to the YouTube comments if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, you can send it over to us, and we can get it out to the masses.
Okay.
Yeah.
No problem. And I can up.
They have it in my county too. It's the Schneider sells their services to different county assessors. So if you go to your county assessor's office in the area you model, if they happen to subscribe to Schneider with their Beacon software, then you'll have the same thing Joe's describing.
Wow.
So this is an Eric Hansen photo of the opposite side of that elevator, just to give another glimpse of the variety of detail that exists there. Just the variety of silo types, grain bin types alone is just astounding. And what you can't see here is that there are two more grain legs behind these concrete silos. So it's just really a detailer's dream there. That's going to be a blast to model. And this is Anita as it exists today. The structures here are, for the most part, just stand-ins that were carried over from the previous layout. But one interesting thing that I think is kind of cool, and maybe it's just me, but the elevator track here in the foreground looks like a double-ended track, but in my time frame, the Iowa Interstate had straight railed that west turnout.
Cool.
So
Nice.
made it a stub-ended track there, and
That nicely done.
it's one of those things they've come through and restored that turnout now, but it's one of those fun little details, I think, that adds a lot. For the most part, nobody's going to pay attention to that stuff but me, unless they're looking around for a turnout throw that doesn't exist. But the other thing that I really like about that is it in the time period I model, Anita could never. There wasn't enough track capacity east of the spout to load more than 6 cars at a time. And on the layout, that's actually compressed to like 4. And so they, when the railroad was spotting Anita, they never went west of this brick crossing. And so as a result, that left a stretch of this spur that was oftentimes used by the railroad for tying down maintenance away cars. And I feel like this is an opportunity that we miss out on sometimes as modelers, that that has essentially created a new customer for me. That's a new spot that will I don't want to say ship and receive cars, but you know, there will be set outs made there. There'll be pickups made at a later time when those cars are needed elsewhere. And so I think that's kind of a neat detail that they throw a freebie customer at me with no additional trackage needs there. So next up is Wyoda, and to fully appreciate Wyoda, I have to first introduce you to this woman. This is Betty Pollock. She was the owner of the elevators at both Wyoda and Anita. She was 70 years old during the time frame I model, and she was still actively engaged in all this. I remember seeing like switch reports and so on that would mention Betty by name, and it was just I just thought it was really cool that she was like a one person, you know, conglomerate out here with these elevators. She by May 2005, the elevator itself in Wyoda had been torn down. There were still some supporting structures there that we'll see in just a moment. But the 6 cars that the Anita elevator had capacity for, that wasn't enough for her. She wasn't gonna settle for that, and so she began trucking grain over to Wyoda, to the old elevator spur there, and loading via auger at Wyoda at the same time that they were loading in Anita. So she could actually do 12 cars at a time. And I think that was kind of her normal quantity, from what I understood from paperwork and so on, that she'd do 6 in Anita, 6 in Wyoda. Both were moved by tractors, very much like you see in this Andy Brown photo. And I just thought that was just the story in this photo, the story that this tells is just, there's just so much texture to this that I just thought it was really a neat scene.
That's right up my alley.
Oh, it is nothing says small town Iowa more than this photo, I don't think.
Yeah.
And the
small town Midwest.
Yeah, for sure. I was actually just talking with Dan Bass, the one engineer that I mentioned earlier, just talking with him earlier, and he was talking about how this Wyoda at this time frame seemed like a throwback to the 1960s or 70s. It just was really small town operations at their finest. The sheet of plywood between the rails and just so many neat details there.
Is that tractor pulling the car along?
Yeah. This one in Wyoda, they would do it by cable. The tractor in Anita actually had a coupler on the hitch, and if I remember correctly, I believe I've seen that a few times. I should also mention, I forgot to mention when we were talking about Betty. Betty Pollock was the aunt-in-law of one of the Iowa Interstate engineers I mentioned earlier, John Knutson. And so there's this great family connection between the railroad and the elevator, and John, just an example of the kind of help that I've had from these guys. John did some research for me and found out what make, model, and color of vehicle Betty drove in May 2005.
Oh, no kidding.
No. And so that Chrysler 300M is going to be right there at either Anita or Wyoda, or might move it around from time to time. But yeah, it's that kind of thing that has just blown me away with the helpfulness with these guys. It's I can't thank them enough.
If what you do, Joel, what you do is you go and you put her anywhere on the layout, like she's in transit going between the two locations.
There you go.
And then put on there, can you find Betty? Where's Betty?
I several years ago, a bunch of us got together and ordered a bunch of figures from a company in I think it was in England, and they had some really nice realistic figures, and one of them I had just ordered like a generic sort of slightly older woman figure, with the express purpose of modeling Betty, before I ever had a photo of her new, and now the whole thing sounds a little creepy now that I hear myself say it. But yeah, if it wasn't for the creepy factor, the idea of having a 3D figure printed of her sitting outside of one of the elevators, I think would be sort of cool. But another really neat thing I like about Wyoda is this white structure to the left of the covered hopper. That was the Rock Island's original depot there. During my time frame, it was the elevator office. But it started out life across on the other side of the main line and a little bit further to the east. And the elevator bought it and moved it over here. So I thought that was kind of an interesting little side note on this scene. This is Wyoda on the layout. That elevator I was just mentioning, I actually was a standard Rock Island design. So I was able to take advantage of a Blair line kit that was almost identical to that prototype. I had to modify a couple of window locations slightly, but aside from that, it was dead on. And so that was a nice little bonus. As with every scene on this layout, there's a lot to do still, but it's getting there. It's coming along. The next scene up is the Grove City overpass that existed just between Wyoda and Atlantic. This was kind of a popular spot with local rail fans, both as a backdrop, as you see here, and as a platform for photography. This is a Rick Anderson photo from 1973. Rick's father, Charles, was the Atlantic station agent for the last 25 years of his career, and he retired like a year before shutdown. But Rick also worked for the Rock Island. I believe even when he was still in high school, I think he was doing some work, paid or not, I'm not sure, but he was a big rail fan and did an outstanding job of documenting this time in the Atlantic area. And he's also done quite a bit of damage to my budget. He's shown me what's possible with doing, building like an alternate era roster that I could swap, my Iowa Interstate stuff off the layout and swap late 70s Rock Island on there, and so I think Rick owes me some cash here, but no, he's been awesome about filling in a lot of gaps with a lot of really interesting details from that time frame. Again, it goes without saying that this is very much a work in progress, but this is where that overpass will eventually reside. Not last, but next up is Atlantic itself. Back to that Dan Munson photo that I shared at the start of this. This is perhaps my all-time favorite Iowa Interstate photograph of any kind. I've always just been really fascinated with this particular part of the railroad, and Dan's photo just did an amazing job of capturing so many things that I really like about this. The restored depot here in the background, the Jordan spreader on south siding over here was it was a fixture. It didn't move for years, and so that was kind of a must-have in modeling. The little star-built prefab yard office, the white structure off to the left there, the track arrangement. I feel like for a small town, I love the relative complexity of the track here with the crossover, the west siding continuing on into the lower left corner of the photo there. That switch at the lower right is the east leg of what at one time had been a Y on the Rock Island, and the switch remained during the time frame I'm modeling, and I love those details. If we zoom in a little bit here, the rover's been in town. The local that is based at Atlantic was doing some elevator work that day, apparently. Tracks 1 and 2 here, where the covered hoppers are resting. That's track 1. Track 2 was also used for revenue moves, and then 3 and 4, the next 2 over, were maintenance away equipment. Atlantic was a big maintenance away terminal, and so you'd see a lot of rolling stock there, a lot of vehicles, and so on. There on the left is that Chessie boxcar. In my time frame, it was still on its trucks and was about halfway down, not quite halfway on track 4. Still used for the same purpose as a tool and equipment storage car for maintenance away, but it had been detrucked and moved over to this location between my 2005 era and when Dan shot this in 2009. But yeah, I just that's pretty much my favorite part of the prototype right there. This has been my attempt to recreate that so far. Again, this is that.
Yeah, it looks pretty good to me.
Thank you. It's this is that portion of the prototype that came with me from the old layout. For the most part, the foreground stuff is new, but still have a lot of backdrop photos to put up. Clark Cooper's been mentioned a couple of times here, at least, and Clark has been a huge help to me as well. That pile of material back there, that is a box containing a a laser cut kit that Clark created for me for modeling that Atlantic Depot. So I cannot wait to get going on that. The Jordan spreader on the right, right where it sat for so many years, and the yard office on the left was a quick and dirty scratch build, real simple little structure, real easy project. But yeah, that's Atlantic, the yard itself. And then as we move a little bit further west is the East Nishnabotna River crossing and Audubon Junction. This is the prototype span. It was, excuse me, the prototype bridge was a total of 9 spans. This is where I had to laugh when Colin was presenting, because this is very much not a world where we don't compress our bridges. That's as much as we're going to get there, but I was happy to be able to squeeze that in regardless, because I didn't have room to model that on the previous layout, and so even 3 spans was I was pretty much elated by that. At Audubon Junction is actually just to the west of that bridge on the prototype and model, just under these first 2 covered hoppers, and that is where the Audubon branch diverged from the main line. In this photo, the main line to Hancock and Council Bluffs is off to the left there. What was originally called the Audubon branch is diverging from that, and then you see the spur for pellet petroleum diverging from the branch. The branch itself was originally went to Audubon in Rock Island times and early Iowa Interstate. In the mid 90s, it was truncated about 3 miles north of Atlantic. And since that time has just been referred to as the Atlantic Spur, but crews still call it the branch. This is that scene on the layout looking back toward the junction, and again, this is the other end of staging, and this is that other little view block that the little lift out that I mentioned. That covers the west staging yard ladder, and that is the green storage tanks are part of that pellet petroleum facility. Last up is Atlantic Spur itself. Besides pellet, these are the only 2 other customers on that line, the ADM Harlan elevator, and to the right there where you see those storage tanks is Farm Service Co-op. They only received, and you see the liquid tanks there, but they actually received the only rail shipments they received were granular fertilizer. The other neat little detail over there is, you look closely, hiding among the covered hoppers is ADM's little 45 tonner that they use for shuffling cars while they loaded. That is going to be a pretty significant part of operations on this part of the layout. I haven't decided yet if I'll subject crews to that, or if I'll just handle that shuffling myself. But this is the scene on the layout, and there's that little 45 tonner. Prototype and model have these cool little side rods that I just think it's a blast to watch to watch it operate. and James McNab is very kindly creating a loading module for me. Two of them actually, one for this elevator and one for Adair that we saw at the top of this this presentation, where you as you're running the critter and shoving cars up to the spout, you press a button and it will play the sound of grain loading in the car and show a graphic of the a bar chart of how far along you are in the loading process, and because you have to move the car as it's loaded in order to distribute the load properly, and so that's something I'm really looking forward to having in place here.
That's a cool idea. Good Lord.
You guys are taking it to the next level.
You should have that next week for you, Joe.
See, I mean, this is things just don't get any better than modeling the Iowa Interstate. You've got friendly modelers, you've got friendly employees. You just couldn't ask for more. But
of course, he's friendly. You're the Godfather.
You're making us an offer we can't refuse.
I thank you, James. I can't thank you enough for that. And speaking of friendly, I know I'm probably running long here, but real quickly, I wanted to touch on something. I started off with this layout, planning to keep the walls completely clear of displays, to keep the fascia, as clear as possible. But once we got here, and I started to realize the neat stuff that I had received through the years, it was just too cool to sit somewhere that it couldn't be fully appreciated. And I wanted to show some examples of that here. This is the dispatcher board from the Iowa Interstate's original Iowa City headquarters. Alan Hunt nabbed that for me when they were moving out of there, and I had no idea he was doing this. I came home. He lives 5-6 hours from me. I came home one day, and here are these metal boards sitting on our front porch that he had delivered by hand on his way through town, and just blew me away. The graciousness that he would even think to do this for me was pretty amazing. But there's a photo where that little cutout in the middle is there's a photo there of the boards when they were still sitting above the dispatcher's desk in Iowa City, and Al is the dispatcher who was working that day. So it kind of ties everything together. In the background here, the number boards from the Iowa Interstate's M420Rs. Kind of a neat story. I believe it was Jason mentioned Jeff Jensenius earlier, the chief mechanical officer on the Iowa Interstate back in this time frame. When Jeff was looking to sell the M420Rs, I had a list. I think this is back like in the Yahoo group days or something. There was a gentleman on that list who worked for it was Regional and Shortline Modelers was the name of the group. The gentleman on there worked for the Southern Railway of New Jersey, and I had made a comment on there that I'd heard a rumor that the Iowa Interstate was looking to sell these M420Rs, much to my disappointment. And this group member picked that up, took it to his boss at the SRNJ, and his boss reached out. Well, actually, no, Brian Mott, the friend of mine from this group, reached out and said, "Hey, could you make the introductions here?" And Jeff and I had spoken a couple of times about some. Doesn't matter. Anyway, we chatted, and I reached out to Jeff. That conversation ended up leading to those units being sold to the SRNJ, and as a thank you, Brian ended up sending me the number board from the 801, and then several years later, I still don't know how he arranged this, but Nathan Holmes from Iowa Scaled Engineering ended up getting like I can't remember how many of the other number boards from those units, and he gifted me the 800 and 802. So
wow,
boom. Yeah, just the kind of thing that just I couldn't not put up. This is I don't know the exact term for this. I believe it's called an artist lithograph. Someone correct me if you know, but this was a print of some kind that was given by the Rock Island to Charles Anderson, the father of Rick Anderson that I mentioned earlier. That Charles was the Atlantic station agent, and when I met Rick about 20 some years ago, one of the first times we met, he brought this to me and gave it to me, thinking that the spot where I'm going to be modeling Atlantic would be a great place to display that, and I couldn't agree more. So that's got a place of honor there, and I was extremely grateful that he would me with something that had belonged to his father. Same thing here, very much in the same vein. This sign belonged to Betty Pollock, the owner of the Wyoto elevator, and John Knutson and his wife Tracy were exceedingly kind to think of me and pass this along to me within the last year. I forget when it was exactly, but I thought this was kind of a neat way to memorialize Betty Pollock, and can't thank her family, and can't thank John and Tracy and Betty's sons enough. Her sons actually still own and operate the Anita elevator there. So,
oh wow,
cool.
Need to see that continue on, but that's it for me. I apologize for running so long.
Oh no.
Thank you all very much for your patience.
Oh, it's fantastic. We're gonna bring, I guess, the ringleader of the crew back here, Scott, for, I guess, closing comments, arguments, alibis here.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Andy, and Mike for having us on. We love your show, and it's a real pleasure to participate in your show. And on behalf of the Iowa Interstate Mafia, we're so happy to have shared what we did tonight with all of your viewers. So thanks again.
Oh yeah, of course. And I'll just, Mike, I'll just say something, then I'll let you jump in. I thought I was really not, I don't know how to say this. this was a fantastic idea, Scott, that you had brought to us about bringing a bunch of modelers who model the same prototype together to talk about this. So first off, hats off to you and the Mafia here for putting this idea together and bringing it to our audience, because our audience has been just commenting all night. We love this. We love this. We love this. So I just want to thank you, Scott, and Jason. I know you're not you're just an associate of the Mafia, but Kyle had to drop early, Joe and James, of course, for taking the time to put all this together. I know there's a lot of scheduling that had to go into this, and a lot, like, you could just tell how much you guys put into this content for tonight, and it's truly appreciated. So thank you. And I can't say enough. This show is amazing. Mike,
I got nothing. I don't for one of the first times since we've been doing this, there's been very few times where I literally have I don't know what to say. I honestly don't. This has got to be one of the coolest shows we've done in a long time. Like a long time. I mean, to actually see the modeling progression from east to west, and how everybody feeds off everybody else's what they're doing, and the sharing of knowledge and the sharing of information, and how it like Joe needs something, Colin might have it. You know what I mean? Or Scott needs something. Everybody goes to Jason, and he goes to Jason and asks him, "Hey, when I need to know about this, do you have something on this?" I mean, it's just it's like a club within a club. You know what I mean? It's without being a club. I mean, and what makes it even better is you guys are all buddies.
Yeah.
Because of it. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. I am 100% jealous. 110% jealous of this entire group of guys. This is what the hobby should be about. This is the absolute epitome of what this hobby is supposed to be about. And my hat's off to you guys. Amazing modeling, really awesome stories, and man, I tell you what, it's thank you. And Scott, thank you very, very much for organizing all of this stuff. I tell you what, you are too good at this, man.
Can I say something, Mike?
Yeah.
Everybody thinks of Iowa as flyover country, right? Like there's nothing here. But I'm going to tell you, there are some very, very talented modelers in this state.
Yes.
And the nice thing about it is we all kind of know each other and bounce ideas off one another and stuff. These guys are modeling more modern. I model more transition era, 60s and stuff. But I mean, there's scattered all over this state are some very outstanding layouts and very, very highly skilled modelers.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's if anybody wants to take anything away from this show, just look at the camaraderie that these guys have put together and how they're all modeling towards a common theme and working towards a common theme, even though they're doing different eras, different sections of the railroad, everything, it's all still the same railroad, and it's just, this is a thing of beauty to watch tonight.
Yeah.
Part of, and so instead of thanking me or thanking Andy, and I don't know if every once in a while Andy likes to say something. I'm going to I might speak for Andy right here. Thank you for letting us be a part of what you guys have done. Thank you very much. It's an honor. It definitely is an honor.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Scott.
Well, I was just going to say that's very nice of you to say. We all appreciate it, and we all have a love for the Iowa Interstate Railroad. And that's how we all got to be friends, and that's what's so wonderful about this hobby, And
it something that occurred to me as I was putting this together for my part is it's kind of amazing when you look at how closely aligned so many of us have been with regard to things like derails, like the use of derails. And I know I was a holdout for the longest time on switch locks, but James kept at me, and I eventually wised up and came around, and now I'm totally on board with that. I think that adds so much to operations. I think the proto throttle. I think just about everybody is right there in lockstep on that. It's not very often that you see. I think that you see a number of different people with similar interests, but where even down to the detailed operational level, there's so much. There are so many similarities there.
I think that this group works for the sole purpose that we are each other's benchmark. I know that these guys are my benchmark. Every time I chat with them, every time that we share, hey, I'm working on this, I'm working on that, the first thing that pops in my mind is step up your game, because look at what is being done amongst your peer group. And so it has been, I talked about how deadlines are ultimately motivating. Having this is ultimately motivating. I would have never, ever done half the stuff that you saw without somebody who is currently on this show saying, have you tried this? Have you thought of that? And for that, I am forever grateful.
Yeah. So a couple of things real quick before we sign off for tonight. Thanks, James, again, and Scott, Jason, Colin, Joe, and Kyle. We'll give you a shout out as well. I want to thank the section crew this evening. We held 130 strong here right to the end. And that's a really good turnout for us. So thank you for all the good questions and the great comments, and keeping it focused on the topic at hand tonight. And it was, again, you guys are what makes this show happen. So thank you again for showing up. If you want to get or see more of any of our guests this evening, from James, Scott, Jason, Colin, Joe, I've put again in the show notes or in the description of the YouTube live stream this evening, everyone's contacts and socials, and where you can see their work and get in contact with them. So make sure that you guys are hitting these folks up, because there's a lot of good information here, and they didn't cover it all tonight. So just scratching the surface. So and then one last thing, if you want to hear more, see more of the Second Section podcast, I'll give you the awkward plug right now. Hit the subscribe button. That's the easiest, cheapest way to support us. And then if you want to keep the party rolling, we do have a Facebook group out there, Second Section Podcast. We got about 1,700 members now in the group. It's growing every day, and everyone's coming together and sharing great modeling ideas and displaying their work. So I can't say to the Mafia here, thank you again so much. And Mike, just like we always say on the Second Section podcast,
just keep modeling.